Chapter 795. Gaia Year, January 11th, Lingxi City. Several days had passed since the Battle of Wanshan City. Yesterday, the Dragon Stallion Army had sent news that they had captured the entire territory of Tungyue County under the siege of 3 armies. According to the battle reports from the front lines, after the defeat of the coalition army in Wanshan City, the following siege was almost a piece of cake. Often, before the army of Shanghai City arrived, the defenders in the city would open the gates and surrender. There was almost no fighting along the way. This was the irresistible trend of the times. In this way, Tungyue County was spared the torment of war and could be considered to have escaped the calamity. It was a win-win situation for both Tungyue County and Shanghai City. At the same time, the war on Izhou Island was also nearing its end. Overlord City had already given up when the Strait of Izhou was blockaded by the 2 major fleets. Even if Xiongba returned, he would be powerless to reverse the situation. Seeing that there were no reinforcements, the resistance of Izhou Island naturally weakened. With the cooperation of the 3rd Corps of the Brave Tiger Army, the army destroyed cities and strongholds along the way. In this way, the war in the entire southern border was almost over. The end of the month was the Lunar New Year's Eve. The end of the war brought a hint of peace and auspiciousness to the Spring Festival. Moreover, the soldiers missed their loved ones during the Spring Festival, so it was not appropriate for them to continue fighting. Not only the southern border, but the entire China region would gradually stop fighting to welcome the arrival of another Spring Festival. On this day, Hua Tsubing arrived at Lingxi City with the Imperial Guards and set up camp outside the city. As early as 2 days ago, the army of Swordsman City had completely withdrawn from Dongchuan County. But before leaving, the army of Swordsman City had carried out a very disgraceful plundering operation in Dongchuan County. The rich merchants and aristocratic families of the major cities had been robbed of a layer of oil. After the incident, it was estimated that the army of Swordsman City had plundered at least 400,000 gold coins from Dongchuan County, which was not very rich in the first place. Some chambers of commerce even had no liquid funds to purchase goods and were in danger of going bankrupt. In addition, the 15,000 captives of the Imperial Guards were also brought back to Swordsman City's territory. Feng Qingyang's attitude was very clear. He did not want to confront Shanghai City head-on, nor did he have any intention of cooperating. Feng Qingyang probably thought that Shanghai City could not do anything to him if he returned to Shu. Ouyang Shua could only say, "Too naive." On the same day, Ouyang Shua sent a message to Feng Qingyang through the Daily Dispatch, demanding that Swordsman City return the captives of the Imperial Guards within a week and compensate 800,000 gold coins for the economic losses caused by the looting of Dongchuan Prefecture. Otherwise, they could only meet on the battlefield. Ouyang Shua was not joking. After the Imperial Guards arrived at Lingxi City, Hua Tsubing entered the city and had a secret conversation with Ouyang Shua. Early the next morning, the Imperial Guards once again broke camp and marched majestically towards Dongchuan County. Dongchuan Prefecture's Yongren City was a place of shame for the Imperial Guards. No one would think that Hua Tsubing was leading the Imperial Guards to Dongchuan Prefecture for fun. Even from afar, everyone could smell the scent of vengeance. The dark clouds of war that had just stopped seemed to be stirring up trouble again. Shu, Swordsman City. Unlike the other main cities, Swordsman City had a strong atmosphere of the underworld. People from the Jianghu could be seen coming and going on the streets. Hundreds of martial arts schools dotted the streets. It was a spectacular sight. In this atmosphere, the people in the city had a strong martial spirit. Brawls, sparring, and internal battles were happening all the time in the city. For this reason, Swordsman City imitated the 6th Fan School and formed a special constable to control the people from the Jianghu. Even the central street of the city was designed in the shape of a giant sword. The hilt of the sword was the mayor's residence. In the study of the mayor's residence, Feng Qingyang was furious when he saw the Daily Dispatch report. He said fiercely, "Bastard, I've never seen such an arrogant person. Let's fight then. Who's afraid of who?" Feng Qingyue sighed in his heart when he saw his elder brother's reaction. Feng Qingyue did not expect his elder brother to be so blinded by greed that he would send an army to rob the people for a mere 400,000 gold coins. Swordsman City immediately became the laughingstock of the world when the news came out. Every lord of a territory that had survived to this point knew the importance of the people's hearts. Apart from the people's hearts in the territory, the lord's reputation outside was equally important. The reason why the Allied forces were willing to surrender to Shanghai City was because of Ouyang Shua's reputation. The Chamberlain of Dependencies even set up a department to publicize the lord's reputation. In comparison, Feng Qingyang's actions made people feel helpless. It was no wonder that after the news spread, some people joked that the Feng family was a group of martial artists who were not suitable to manage a territory and that it was better for them to submit to Liu Bei. They were filled with malice. Ouyang Shua's announcement through the Daily Dispatch shattered all of Feng Qingyang's fantasies. Shanghai City would never compromise. If Swordsman City did not agree to Shanghai City's conditions, war would be inevitable. Shanghai City had just won the war in Yunnan and was terrifyingly powerful. Even the entire Yinhuang alliance could not do anything to Shanghai City. How could a mere Swordsman City resist the ferocious army of Shanghai City? Thinking about the faces of Di Chun and the others, Feng Qingyue did not think that they would start a war with Shanghai City again for Swordsman City. The only way was to compromise. Feng Qingyue frowned at the thought of the humiliating conditions. Swordsman City was going to humiliate themselves this time. But judging from his elder brother's expression, he was afraid that he would not compromise so easily. A chaotic battle was unavoidable. Feng Qingyue looked in the direction of Yongren City, and his eyes flashed. I'm afraid that Shanghai City's demands will not be so simple. Lingxi City. Because of the looting of Swordsman City, Ouyang Shua had no choice but to start appointing and removing personnel from the newly occupied 4 counties before the Imperial Guards arrived at Lingxi City, so that all the county governors could set off for their posts in time. Just yesterday, the Southern Border Protectorate announced a series of appointments and removals. Tian Wenjing was removed from his position as the Cheongzhou Prefectural Governor and appointed as the Mengding Prefectural Governor. Hai Rui was appointed as the new Cheongzhou Prefectural Governor. These 2 appointments had already been decided a long time ago, and there were no surprises. The only surprise was that Mengding Prefectural Governor was more dilapidated than expected. Now, it was up to Tian Wenjing, the cold-faced prefectural governor, to restore the people's support and the local economy in a short period of time. Ouyang Shua unexpectedly had a surplus of 1 million gold coins from the global auction that had just ended. Ouyang Shua did not keep a single cent of it and invested it all into the Yunnan province. Other than the 300,000 gold coins for the teleportation fee, the remaining 700,000 gold coins would be used to support the construction of the 3 counties in Yunnan. For Mengding County alone, 300,000 gold coins were allocated as construction funds. Dongchuan County was unexpectedly looted and would also receive 200,000 gold coins as financial support. The remaining 200,000 gold coins were naturally invested into Tingyue County. Chao Can was removed from the position of Kunming County's Chief Administrative Officer and appointed as the Prefectural Governor of Dongchuan County. Chao Can's appointment was recommended by the Prefectural Governor of Kunming County, Bai Hua. Ouyang Shua had already promised Bai Hua, the future governor of Yunnan Province, as one of the conditions for Shanghai City to annex Lingxi City. As Bai Hua's most important administrative assistant, Chao Can, as the Prime Minister of the Han Dynasty, was bound to play an important role in the future governor's office and hold an important position. It was precisely because of this that Bai Hua proposed to let Chao Can serve in Dongchuan County before the establishment of the Yunnan Province Governor's Office to accumulate political achievements. Chao Can was not only capable but also familiar with the situation in Yunnan and military affairs. Since it was Bai Hua who recommended Chao Can to be the prefectural governor of Dongchuan County, Ouyang Shua had no reason not to agree. Zhou Haichun, the prefectural magistrate of Laizhou County, was promoted to the prefectural governor of Tingyue County. Izhou Island was renamed Izhou County and military administration was temporarily implemented. The appointment of Izhou County's prefectural governor was postponed. Originally, Ouyang Shuo was prepared to appoint Lei Fan, the magistrate of Jili County's Duanren Prefecture, as Izhou County's prefectural governor. Unexpectedly, this appointment was not approved by the administrative department and was put on hold for further discussion. Ouyang Shuo's intention to promote two native magistrates to the position of prefectural governor was truly unexpected. There was a qualitative leap from magistrate to prefectural governor. It was equivalent to the leap from city to province in reality. It was like a natural moat. If they weren't in the game, such an appointment would probably be a laughingstock. Even with Chui Shaoxi, a native, being promoted to prefectural governor, the appointment of the two people still encountered some resistance. Even if Ouyang Shuo pushed hard, the administrative department would still choke him. The chief of the administrative department, Xiao He, had doubts about the two new prefectural governors, especially about Lei Fan. Zhou Haichun was, after all, a proper prefectural governor from the wilderness. He had served as the assistant chief of the administrative department, Yuyi County Magistrate, and Lei Mountain Magistrate. His resume was complete, and he was a meritorious elder of the territory. But Lei Fan? Born as a mountain barbarian, he had never properly studied for more than a few days in his life. His only academic resume was 2 months of advanced studies at Southwest University China Hall. In the eyes of Xiao He and the others, mountain barbarians were synonymous with ignorance. It was ridiculous for them to be promoted to a high-ranking official. As such, Zhou Haichun's appointment was barely approved, but Lei Fan's appointment was stuck. Ouyang Shuo could not ignore the opinions of Xiao He and the other officials. If he really did that, the whole system would not be able to operate effectively, and it might even shake the territory's foundation. If Ouyang Shuo forcefully ordered the administrative department to approve Lei Fan's appointment, Xiao He would have to resign. This was something Ouyang Shuo did not want to see. For this reason, Ouyang Shuo had no choice but to personally send a letter to Xiao He to discuss this appointment. He suggested that the administrative department of personnel send out an inspection team to conduct a political evaluation on Lei Fan. This matter would be discussed after the evaluation results were out. Since the Lord Ouyang Shuo took the initiative to take a step back, Xiao He naturally would not be tactful and agreed to this proposal. Just the day before yesterday, the inspection team, led by Zhang Tingyu, had entered Duanren Mansion. Without a doubt, this appointment would become a landmark in the history of the territory's development. The conflict and cooperation between the monarch and the prime minister would become the norm in the territory's future officialdom. To Ouyang Shuo, the test and experience had just begun. Chapter 796. As the appointment of the county governors was announced, Zhou Haichun entered the public eye and became the most popular person in the territory. Zhou Haichun's background and resume were thoroughly investigated. Chui Shaoxi, who had been promoted to prefectural governor, had the support of the Chui clan and the first princess of the protectorate, Chui Yingyu, as a mediator. Zhou Haichun was different. He came to the territory as a refugee. He had no relatives or friends in the territory. He relied on his own hard work and Jun Shang's appreciation to get to where he was today. The only connection was that he had been trained by Fan Zhongyan when he was in the administrative office. Ouyang Shuo still remembered that he had weighed the pros and cons between Zhou Haichun and Qin Shijian when he was establishing the subsidiary territory of Friendship County. In the end, Zhou Haichun was appointed as the Yu County Magistrate and Qin Shijian as the head of the Administrative Department Merit Examination. To this day, Zhou Haichun was already a high-ranking military official, while Qin Shijian was still the chief of the Examination Department. However, at this time, the Merit Examination Department was already a department under the administration of officials under the General Administration of Administration. From the looks of it, going down to the ground to gain experience will be a better way to gain political achievements and be promoted. As for the twists and turns in the appointment of Lei Fan, due to the protection of Lei Fan, only Ouyang Shuo, Xiao He, Zhang Tingyu, and a few others knew about it. Outsiders did not know the inside story. Even Lei Fan himself did not know much about this. Ouyang Shuo considered promoting Lei Fan to the county chief of Izhou. Firstly, When Shanghai City took over Yunnan City, they did not find any outstanding historical talents. Secondly, Lei Fan was born in the mountain barbarian tribe, so he was very familiar with the multi-ethnic policy of the territory. It was beneficial for him to work in Ezhou County, which was dominated by the indigenous Han Mountain tribe. In addition, Ouyang Shuo also had political considerations to appease the mountain barbarians. Ouyang Shuo was the barbarian king, and the mountain barbarian warriors had continuously made contributions on the battlefield. It was time to give the barbarian mountain tribe more authority. Lei Fan's advancement would undoubtedly further increase the mountain barbarian tribe's loyalty and cohesiveness towards their territory. This would also lay a solid foundation for subduing the barbarians of Shu in the future. Of course, Xiaohe's concerns were not without reason. Before Lei Fan became the Gushan County magistrate, he was only a tribal chief. He had never received an orthodox education, so he was naturally flawed. However, just based on this point alone, Lei Fan could not be vetoed. In history, how could there be a few who were born in the wilderness who eventually became generals and ministers? Even Xiaohe himself was just an inconspicuous county official in Pei County at the very beginning. Meritocracy referred to one's abilities, not one's birth. Ouyang Shuo was confident in Lei Fan. The evaluation team, led by Zhang Tingyu, would bring Xiaohe a pleasant surprise. Gaia 4th year, January 15th. Dongchuan County. It could be said that Dongchuan Prefecture had been plagued with disasters during this period of time. First, it was plowed by the Imperial Guards. Then, it was destroyed by the Allied Army and the Allied Army. Finally, the army of Swordsman City stirred up trouble in the territory. The Swordsman City's army did not stay for long before the Imperial Guards returned. The common people of Dongchuan County were suffering unspeakably. Because of the lack of information in ancient times, the common people did not know the war situation in Yunnan. Every morning, when they woke up, they did not know which hero was ruling the city. On this day, Hui Zubing led the Imperial Guards to the outskirts of Yongren City. The corpses outside the city had already been cleared by the system. The land that was dyed red with blood was proof that a great war had taken place not long ago. The soldiers of the 1st Regiment of the Imperial Guards were in a daze. Many of them had been buried here before, but were miraculously resurrected and once again set foot on this blood-stained land. Yongren City was a place of shame that the Imperial Guards could not erase. As soon as the Imperial Guards stepped into Dongchuan Prefecture, the Lord of Yongren City had already abandoned the city and fled. The Yunnan City-State had already disbanded, and the Yinhuang Alliance had also been defeated by Shanghai City. Facing the menacing and vengeful Imperial Guards of Shanghai City, the Lord of Yongren City could not think of anyone else who could help him. Although Feng Qingyang was arrogant, the army of Swordsman City did not even stay here. They quickly returned to Sichuan and stationed themselves 50 miles away from the border. It was obvious that they did not want to fight the army of Shanghai City. Staying here at this time was no different from waiting for death. The Lord of Yongren City was decisive. He packed up his belongings and ran away. As for the promise that the Yinhuang Alliance had given him before the war, he was not going to fulfill it. If he tried to reason with the Yinhuang Alliance now, he would probably be eaten alive by Di Chun and the others. Ever since the end of the war in Wenshan City, the China Forum had not stopped. Discussions about the war, the post-war structure of China, and the future of the two alliances were endless. However, there was one thing that was surprisingly consistent. No matter what they were discussing, they were all optimistic about the future of Shanghai City and the Yinhuang Alliance. The water army that the Yinhuang Alliance had hired wanted to make their presence known and speak up for their master. They wanted to change the direction of public opinion, but they were immediately drowned out by other players. Such a serious situation was something that Di Chun and the others had never encountered before. Some well-informed people said that the members of the Yinhuang Alliance had been meeting frequently in the past few days. They were probably thinking of ways to resolve the crisis at hand. At this time, if the Lord of Yongren City were to go against Di Chun and the others, he would be courting death. Therefore, seeing that the Imperial Guards had arrived outside the city, the only remaining city guards in Yongren City, immediately left the city and surrendered. Along with the city guard brigade, the city's gentry and wealthy merchants also came out of the city to welcome them. There were hundreds of them. Huitzubing did not know whether to laugh or cry at their first question. "General, since you're here, you won't be leaving, right?" When he asked this, he looked very nervous. Huitzubing laughed in his heart. He did not have a good impression of Yongren City. However, as the commander of the army, not only did he have to understand military affairs, he also had to consider the interests of the territory. The commander represented more than just military power. "Don't worry. The entire Yunnan city has already been conquered by our army. Do you think we can still leave?" The moment the news came out, the hearts of the wealthy merchants trembled. Wow, so the Southern Cloud province has really changed. With this thought in mind, the wealthy merchants finally heaved a sigh of relief and were no longer on tenterhooks. To them, the most important thing was not who ruled the city. The most important thing was stability. "All hail the general. Please come in. Please come in." The aristocrats and merchants immediately put on brilliant smiles. However, Huitzubing did not fall for this. He was born noble and did not like to interact with merchants. Moreover, as the saying goes, once bitten, twice shy. Huitzubing would not recklessly barge into the city. Although the spies from the Bureau of Military Intelligence had confirmed that the Lord of Yongren City had indeed left, the territory stone tablet was still standing in the Castellan's residence, and the teleportation portal was still working. No one could guarantee that Yanhuang Alliance wouldn't launch another sneak attack. Huitzubing arranged for a battalion to enter the city first and destroy the territory stone tablet. Only then could he lead his troops into the city with confidence and officially complete the occupation of Yongren City. However, Huitzubing was overthinking things. Di Chun and the others really did not have such thoughts at the moment. That night, the wealthy merchants in the city jointly invited the generals of the Imperial Guards to a banquet. Huitzubing could not refuse. Although the attitudes of these wealthy merchants were humble, it did not mean that they were insignificant. If the officials sent by Shanghai City wanted to govern Yongren City well, they would need the support of these people. The wilderness had already belonged to Gaia for 4 years and was no longer Gaia for 1 year. Even in the player's territory, there were all sorts of social classes and complicated entanglements. It was no longer the era where a new official could wipe out all sorts of evil people as soon as he took office. Otherwise, Ouyang Shuo would not have started a month-long inspection right after the Battle of Lingnan. It was to appease the people and at the same time deal with the wealthy merchants. In the heat of the wine, the true colors of the merchants were revealed. A merchant held a glass of wine and approached Huitzubing. With his signature merchant smile on his face, he bowed and said, "General, I am Zhu Jin. I do some small business in the city. Allow me to offer you a toast." As he spoke, he was the first to drink. Huitzubing remained calm and raised his glass. "Zhu Jin, Zhu Bansheng, you monopolize more than 90% of the cloth, sesame oil, and rice business in Yongren City. Your personal wealth can buy half of Yongren City. You call that small business?" How could Huitzubing not do his homework before attending such a banquet? Although Huitzubing did not like to interact with merchants, it did not mean that he could not handle such a situation. On the contrary, the other Imperial Guards were all very uneasy under the merchants' praises, wine, and delicacies. Only Huitzubing was leisurely sitting at the head of the table, with the demeanor of a noble young master. Huitzubing was able to handle the merchants with ease. During the day, the mountain sea guards had sent detailed information to Huitzubing. Zhu Jin was highlighted, and the information was the most detailed. He was not a refugee from Yongren City. He was the president of a merchant association that the Lord of Yongren City had recruited from Dali City at a great cost. It was because of this that Zhu Jin could monopolize the cloth and rice business in the player cities. Without a doubt, he was the representative of the Yongren City merchants. How could Huitzubing underestimate such a god of wealth? Zhu Jin did not mind being exposed. This was something he had expected in the first place. Seeing Huitzubing drink the wine in his glass, Zhu Jin's smile widened. "Great General, You flatter me. I dare not say anything else, but if the army needs any supplies, I can still help." As he spoke, Zhu Jin's tone suddenly changed, and he put on a long face. "To tell you the truth, before the damn Swordsman City army left, they robbed us clean and emptied our vaults and warehouses. We can't even pay the salaries of our workers and are about to close down. Now that the Protectorate is in power, don't you think it's time for them to compensate us?" "Yes, yes, yes." The people around him immediately echoed. Obviously, this was the purpose of inviting Hua Tsubing to a banquet. It was not to comfort the soldiers, as they said. Hearing this, Hua Tsubing cursed in his heart, "Shameless merchants. How could they think of this? How could they expect Shanghai City to compensate them after they were robbed by Swordsman City?" Chapter 797. Hua Tsubing controlled his temper and looked around at the merchants. "I'm only in charge of military affairs. I have no right to answer your questions. As for the compensation, you will have to discuss it with the incoming prefectural magistrate." Zhu Ji knew that he would not be able to gain any favor from Hua Tsubing, so he smiled and changed the topic. The feast at Hongmen, which had a hidden edge, was held in a bustling manner. Hua Tsubing was still clear-headed and summoned the generals for a meeting that night. Today was the deadline for Swordsman City to return the captured soldiers and compensate 800,000 gold coins. Obviously, Swordsman City did not intend to comply. Shanghai City had no choice but to resort to force. Back in the tent, the generals felt much more at ease and sobered up. Hua Tsubing sat at the head of the table and said, "Tomorrow morning, the army will break camp and enter Shu. Before that, I would like the head of the Military Intelligence Bureau to introduce the basic situation of Shu." He gestured to a young man sitting at the head of the table. According to Shanghai City's military structure, the Military Intelligence Bureau under the General Administration of Military Affairs was headquartered in Shanghai City. Each of the four armies had a military intelligence division under the command of both the Military Intelligence Bureau and the Army Commander. The young man nodded and opened a map. It was the map of Shu drawn by the Military Intelligence Bureau and the Shanghai Guards. The entire Shu is divided into two large areas, the Western Highlands and the Eastern Plains, with the Qionglai Mountains as the boundary. The Western Highlands are filled with rolling hills and valleys. The valleys are wide and round, and the swamps are more than 4,000 meters above sea level. This area is inhabited by the Chong people and is known as the Chong County. To the west of the Western Highlands is the mysterious Tufan Kingdom. The Eastern Plains is a huge basin surrounded by mountain ranges. It is the main area of Shu and is densely populated with cities and towns. It is known as the Heavenly Province. Other than the Chong County, the rest of the 5 counties are located in the Eastern Plains. Chengdu County is the center of the 4 counties. To the north of Chengdu County is Hanzhong County, to the east is Badong County, and to the south is Jianyang County. Among the 4 counties, Hanzhong County is jointly occupied by 3 feudal lords, forming the Hanzhong Alliance. Chengdu County is occupied by the Shu Han Dynasty, while Badong County and Jianyang County belong to Swordsman City. Chengdu County and Badong County are located in the center of the basin. The terrain is flat and fertile, and they are the essence of Sichuan. Hanzhong County and Jianyang County were located at the north and south ends of the basin. The territory was densely covered with hills, plains and hills, making it easy to defend and hard to attack. These 2 counties can also be regarded as the northern and southern gates of Chengdu. Hearing this, a general asked, "Does this mean that as long as we take down Jianyang County, the southern gateway, the entire Shu will be exposed to our army without any barriers?" "Not bad. Then what are we waiting for? Hurry up and attack." The head of the Military Intelligence Bureau shook his head. "It's not that simple. It was precisely because of the strategic position of Jianyang County that Swordsman City established its main city at the northern end of the county, guarding the last barrier in the south. The pass where Swordsman City was located was already comparable to the Sword Gate Pass at the junction of Hanzhong County and Chengdu County in the north. This is one of the reasons. Secondly, Swordsman City invested a huge sum of money last year to build more than 40 passes of various sizes in Jianyang County. Every city is separated by a pass, and they are heavily guarded. Hiss! The generals sucked in a breath of cold air. This kind of defense using the pass as a node was simply terrifying. The only thing that could pose a threat to such a pass was probably the P1 cannon. However, the mountain roads of Shu were rugged, and some areas did not even have roads. They could only pass through the mountains and the top of the cliffs. It was extremely difficult to transport the cannon that weighed several tons to the designated location. This was also the reason why Feng Qingyang was so fearless. The reputation of Shu being easy to defend and hard to attack was not just for show. Continue, what Xubing said at this moment. Yes, sir. The head of the Military Intelligence Bureau nodded and continued. The closest city to Yongren City in Jianyang County is called Black Iron City. It got its name because of the huge amount of iron ore it produces. There is only a rugged mountain road between Yongren City and Black Iron City. Both sides are high mountains and dangerous peaks. There is a pass near Black Iron City called Aolong Pass. Previously, Swordsman City stationed 40,000 soldiers in Dongchuan County, but they retreated to Aolong Pass. Apart from the 40,000 soldiers, there's also a city guard division stationed in Black Iron City. Apart from that, there's another 30,000 soldiers on their way to Black Iron City and will arrive in a few days. What is the total military strength of Swordsman City? Hua Zubing suddenly asked. Apart from the Imperial Guard Division and the City Guard Division, Swordsman City has two field armies. The first army is stationed in Badong County, and the second army is stationed in Jianyang County. Generally speaking, a county in the wilderness could only support one field army at most. Including the Imperial Guard, City Guard, and local garrison troops, it was basically reaching its limit. Take Shanghai City as an example. Before the Battle of Yunnan, there were a total of 13 counties, including Xing Province County. In the army, including the City Guard and Imperial Guards, there were exactly 13 field armies. Of course, Shanghai City was a special case. Its foundation was much deeper than the other territories, and its main city was already a third-class county. Therefore, it was able to establish a large-scale Nanyang Navy in addition to the army. Even so, the financial pressure on Shanghai City was immense. The 5 great fleets of the Nanyang Navy would not be expanding or forming new fleets for a period of time. If there were any changes, it would be the remodeling of the 5 great fleets, as well as the upgrading of warships and weapons. Apart from the warmongers, very few lords would cross this red line. Correspondingly, a province in the wilderness could at most accommodate a full 5 corps of a combined army. The only special one was the capital city. China's 9 capital cities could support an army of nearly 1 million with just one county. It was because of Gaia's cheat, or else it would be unimaginable. Similarly, the number of players in the capital city was also the same. A capital city could accommodate tens of millions of players without collapsing. It was unimaginable in ancient times. Without Gaia's special settings, how could it be achieved? Shanghai City, which had the highest level among the territory's main cities, was still struggling to reach the population limit of 2 million. For Swordsman City to be able to form 2 field corps in addition to the Imperial Guard Division and the City Guard Division was already an impressive achievement. After all, Swordsman City was not known for managing territories. When Hua Zubing heard this, he raised his eyebrows and said calmly, "In other words, Swordsman City has put the entire military force of Jianyang County into battle with us? That seems to be the case for now. They're too confident. Do they think they can stop us with just 1 corps?" Ma Chao said indignantly. Hua Zubing shook his head and said, "The enemy has the geographical advantage, and they're mainly defending. Furthermore, they're fighting on their home ground. You must not underestimate them." The Imperial Guard Division was mainly composed of cavalry, so they were not good at mountain warfare and siege warfare. The only offensive troops they could bring out were the 2 mountain barbarian heavy infantry divisions. It would not be easy to take down Black Iron City. The key was still time. In Lingxi City, The emperor had clearly instructed that if Swordsman City was unwilling to submit, they had to end the war before New Year's Eve. They could not let this local war drag on until after New Year's Eve. Calculating the time, it would be less than half a month at most. In other words, this war had to be efficient and painful for Swordsman City. The emperor had given the Imperial Guard a difficult problem. However, no matter how difficult it was, Huitzubing had to complete it beautifully. This concerned the honor of the Imperial Guard Division. Is there any other way to enter Black Iron City other than the mountain roads? Huitzubing asked the head of the Military Intelligence Bureau. The head of the Military Intelligence Bureau nodded and said, "Yes. There's a large river called the Jinsha River 80 miles east of Yongren City. If you follow the river upstream, you can directly reach Black Iron City. Moreover, it's dry season right now, so the water flow is calm and not as turbulent as during flood season." "Is there any difficulty?" Huitzubing asked. "Yes. When Swordsman City's army retreated from Dongchuan County, they burned all the large ships in the county in advance. It's difficult for us to transport the army by water in such a short time." Huitzubing was speechless for a while. At this moment, he missed the territory's navy. However, the 5 major fleets were all stationed along the coast, and none of them were active inland. He really wanted to help, but could not. Even if he asked for help now, it would be too late. "Can we gather civilian boats?" someone suggested. Huitzubing shook his head. Not only were the boats limited, but they were also very unsafe. If they were not careful, the boats would be destroyed and the people would die. Moreover, how many boats would be needed to transport an army of hundreds of thousands? It would probably fill up the entire Jinsha River. Apart from transporting the soldiers, they also had to transport rations and supplies, which was even more difficult. The only way was to transport a surprise army of a few thousand people by water. The Imperial Guard Division was equipped with military rations, which were more than enough to support a few thousand troops for a few days. "Are there any spies in Black Iron City?" Huitzubing asked the head of the Military Intelligence Bureau. "Yes. As long as the army is at the city gates, the spies are confident that they can even open the city gates." During the Battle of Yongren City, the 3 major intelligence agencies were scolded by the emperor for their intelligence errors. Since then, they naturally became courageous and prepared to atone for their mistakes. The 3 major intelligence agencies simultaneously strengthened their infiltration of Shu, and Black Iron City was naturally the first to bear the brunt. Moreover, Black Iron City's main livelihood was mining. The population was messy, and the management was chaotic, making it easier for spies to infiltrate. Huitzubing's eyes flashed. He looked at Hu and said, "I'll give you 5,000 elites. Are you confident that you can launch a surprise attack on Black Iron City?" It was more convenient for infantry to travel by water. War horses could not be transported by small boats. 5,000 elite soldiers was the limit that small boats could transport. Hu did not even think about it. He immediately stood up and replied, "No problem." To the mountain barbarians, this was a great honor. Huitzubing nodded and began to arrange a detailed battle plan. The generals listened attentively. If they wanted a surprise attack to succeed, they had to formulate a series of coordinated measures. It was not until late at night that the generals left. Chapter 798. Gaia 4th Year, 17th of the 1st month, Yongren City. At daybreak, more than 100,000 Imperial Guards crossed the border of Dongchuan County and advanced into Swordsman City's territory, initiating a war with Swordsman City. The vast army formed a long dragon that advanced along the winding mountain roads, its vanguard heading straight for Awalong Pass. At the same time, Shu led the 5,000 mountain barbarian warriors toward Jinsha River, avoiding all eyes and ears. Near the Jinsha River, a large number of ships were secretly requisitioned by local officials and concentrated at the river crossings. The war that had just died down in the southwest was once again ignited. At the same time, Shi Wansue's 2nd Dragon Stallion Army and Luo Shixin's 4th Dragon Army had already left Tingyue County and were heading north to Dongchuan County, ready to enter the war and Shu at any time. The cleanup of Tingyue County was left to Zhang Liao's 3rd Dragon Stallion Army. The 2nd and 4th Dragon Stallion Army's main forces guarding the northern part of Yunnan Province. Due to the war in Shu, Shanghai City's new army reorganization had yet to take place. Ouyang Shuo planned to wait until the Battle of Black Iron City ended and the Imperial Guard captives were brought back. Then, he would convene the 4 corps commanders and Navy Governor Zheng He to discuss the reorganization of the army. This arrangement would also be the embryonic form of the highest military organization in the future. According to the preliminary calculations of the General Administration of Military Affairs, after deducting the casualties from the various departments and the mountain barbarian warriors of Tingyue County, it was estimated that 3 or 4 field corps could be formed. How to distribute them was a big problem. The 4 corps naturally hoped to fight for 1 or 2 spots, but the specific distribution would depend on the next step of the territory strategy. Shu, Swordsman City. The Imperial Guard will be the vanguard, and the Dragon Stallion Army will be the backup. In order to get these prisoners of war back, Shanghai City has mobilized 4 field legions. Feng Qingyang could not remain calm after listening to the military report. Feng Qinghue said, "Big brother, it's not too late to negotiate." Negotiate? No, wait until they take a Walong Pass. How will the Imperial Guard of Shanghai City attack the pass? Feng Qingyang was someone who cared a great deal about his reputation, or else he would not have been so stubborn. Feng Qinghue shook his head. Even if the Imperial Guard can't do anything to a Walong Pass for the time being, what if the 2 legions of the Dragon Stallion Army reach the front lines? Even if the Aolong Pass was an impregnable fortress, it would still be destroyed by the Shanghai City's army. Don't forget, not only do they have a new type of cannon, but they also have a flying squad. Shanghai City has 100 ways to deal with a pass like a Walong Pass. In the Battle of Guilin County, didn't the 3 passes fall just like that? If the enemy really took down the Awayalong Pass and pointed their sword at Black Iron City, the situation would become unsalvageable. If the 4 great armies of Shanghai City were to enter Shu, they would be able to conquer the entire Jiangyang County. Big brother, do you want to gamble with the fate of the territory? Feng Qingyang was speechless for a long time. In fact, Feng Qingyang was feeling a little regretful, but he could not admit defeat because of his pride. Yesterday, he had tried to probe the attitude of Di Chun and the others, but all of them were hesitant and didn't want to talk about sending troops. In the Yin Huang Alliance, the Swordsman City was independent and had always been outside of the alliance. If it wasn't for the contribution of the secret martial arts manuals, the Feng clan wouldn't even be able to become one of the 6 major powers in the China region. There was a natural barrier between the Swordsman City and the other territories of the Yin Huang Alliance. Especially after the news of the ambiguous attitude between the Swordsman City and the Shu Han dynasty, Di Chun and the others became even more distant from the Swordsman City. Now that the Shanghai City's army was attacking, how could Di Chun and the others send troops to help the Swordsman City? Before this, Feng Qingyang did not have a clear understanding of the Shanghai City. Until this time, the enemy had mobilized 4 great armies into Shu, and their military strength was twice that of the Swordsman cities. Only then did Feng Qingyang truly feel the gap between the 2 sides. If it wasn't for the Yin Huang Alliance, the Swordsman City was nothing in front of the Shanghai City. This kind of understanding was undoubtedly very depressing. Feng Qingyang looked up at his sister and said with a slightly sinister expression, "If the Shanghai City dares to attack Black Iron City, I will kill all 15,000 prisoners of war." "Please don't." Feng Qinghue turned pale with fright and said in horror, "The Imperial Guards are the glory of the Shanghai City, and also their face. Once we kill the prisoners of war, we will not rest until one of us is dead. A local war is enough to give us a headache. As for an all-out war, it will be enough to drag the Swordsman City to eternal damnation." Feng Qingyang's expression froze, and he said awkwardly, "I was just saying." Feng Qinghue's eyes shone brightly, and she said solemnly, "I hope you're just saying. Big brother, let me give you a piece of advice. Don't ever have such thoughts." Feng Qinghue looked at him worriedly and asked, "Big brother, Did something happen to your cultivation recently? Why do you feel so restless? The martial art that Feng Qingyang was cultivating was no longer the Feng clan's secret art. It was a secret manual that he obtained in the game, and it was extremely strange. Feng Qingwei was worried that something had gone wrong with her brother's cultivation. In history, there were many people who had a huge change in temperament due to a problem in their cultivation. Thinking about the strangeness of that secret manual, Feng Qingyue's worry was not groundless. Unexpectedly, when Feng Qingyang heard this, he immediately asked her to leave. He waved his hand impatiently, and a trace of hostility flashed across his face. "All right, let me think about it. Let me think about it. You can leave first." When Feng Qingyue heard this, she silently looked at her brother and got up to leave. "I better report to father. I can't let big brother do anything that can't be dealt with." With this thought in mind, Feng Qingyue left for the West Court. The West Court was the residence of the Feng clan's elders. The environment was quiet and secluded, and it was the most suitable place for cultivation. The people of the Feng clan were a bunch of martial arts fanatics. Even when they entered the game, they mainly focused on practicing martial arts. They did not care much about the matters in the wilderness. Even the foundation of the clan was left to the two juniors, Feng Qingyang and Feng Qingyue. This indirectly caused Feng Qingyang to have an unruly character. Of course, even if they did not care, the words of the older generation still carried a lot of weight if something really happened. West Court, Sky Sword Academy. The head of the Feng clan, Feng Xiaotian, was less than 50 years old. He was tall and sturdy, with a ruddy face and bright eyes. One look, and anyone could tell that he had a profound cultivation. After listening to his daughter's report, Feng Xiaotian frowned and said, "I didn't expect Qingyang to cause such trouble. I'm really disappointed that he doesn't even know that the clan is in danger. Father, I'm worried that something happened to Big Brother's cultivation. He might be arrogant in the past, but he won't be stubborn to the end. This is a bit too much." Feng Qingyue did not add insult to injury. Feng Xiaotian nodded and said, "The situation you mentioned is not impossible. The sky demon tactics that Qingyang cultivates is incomplete, and it's also a demonic cultivation method. If he's not careful, he might go astray. How about this? I'll go check on Qingyang tonight." Not to mention anything else, Feng Qingyang was indeed a genius in martial arts. Not only did he have an outstanding foundation, but he also had a strong comprehension ability. He could easily understand any profound and obscure technique. Take the sky demon tactics, for example. In the entire Feng clan, Feng Qingyang was the only one who could understand its essence. Feng Xiaotian was quite proud of his son and saw him as the hope of the clan's future rise. How could Feng Xiaotian not be nervous when he heard that Feng Qingyang might have encountered a problem with his cultivation? Feng Qingyue nodded and left. Feng Xiaotian looked pensive as he watched his daughter's back. January 19th, Aolong Pass. Regardless of what happened to the Feng clan, the Imperial Guard's pace of attack was not affected at all. In just 2 days, the vanguard of the Imperial Guard arrived at Aolong Pass. The vanguard of the army was the Mountain Barbarian Heavy Infantry Division. Considering that the mountain road was rugged and long, the army was extremely vulnerable to attack, especially the cavalry. Once they were disturbed, there was no room to turn around on the mountain road, and it was easy to cause chaos. This was one of the reasons why Sichuan had always been difficult to conquer. The Imperial Guards were able to pass through because the map in the game was 10 times larger. Otherwise, they wouldn't even have this mountain road and could only march along the Jinsha River Valley. The valley was steep, and in some places, only plank roads could be built on the cliffs. Even walking was a miracle, not to mention fighting. Therefore, Hua Zubing did not send the entire army forward. Only the mountain barbarian soldiers were marching at high speed. The 2nd Imperial Guard Corps was even stationed at the border, maintaining pressure and deterrence against Aolong Pass. The Mountain Barbarian Heavy Infantry Division arrived at the pass, but did not attack immediately. The mountain road was rugged and steep, and it was impossible to transport large-scale siege weapons. Without siege weapons, it was almost impossible to take down this dangerous pass. After the Mountain Barbarian Heavy Infantry Division set up camp, the first thing they did was to cooperate with the Imperial Guard's Engineering Battalion to gather local materials, cut down trees, and build siege weapons on the spot. When the garrison at Aolong Pass saw this, they naturally mocked them. With such a dangerous pass, in the eyes of the garrison, they could completely sit back and relax. Of course, it was also impossible for them to take the initiative to attack the Mountain Barbarian Division. The Mountain Barbarian Heavy Infantry Division's reputation had long spread throughout the wilderness. Even though the Allied army had cheated the Mountain Barbarians outside Yongren City, the garrison at Aolong Pass did not dare to be presumptuous. Those who knew a little about the inside story knew that in that battle, the Allied army had an absolute advantage in terms of military strength, and they had completely surrounded the Mountain Barbarians, but they were still at a disadvantage in a direct confrontation with the Mountain Barbarians. After paying a greater sacrifice than the Mountain Barbarians, they finally got rid of this hardbone. The current garrison of 40,000 would not dare to fight the Mountain Barbarians, even if they had the guts. The first confrontation between Shanghai City and Swordsman City had begun with such a strange situation. The Mountain Barbarian soldiers were unhurriedly building siege weapons outside the pass, while the garrison inside the pass was leisurely watching the excitement. The scene did not have the slightest tension that a war should have. Mobile users, please browse and read for a better reading experience. Chapter 799. The leisurely atmosphere in front of Aolong Pass did not last long. On the 21st of January, the third day after the Barbarian Mountain Division arrived at Aolong Pass, the war entered the fast lane. With the help of limited siege equipment, the Barbarian Mountain Division launched the first wave of attack on Aolong Pass. The powerful Barbarian Mountain Division, even with simple siege equipment, could form a fierce attack, beating the garrison of Aolong Pass into a sorry state. After a big battle, the casualties of both sides were actually about the same. It was truly terrifying. At the same time, rumbling sounds came from the sky above Aolong Pass. On this day, the aerial squadron finally arrived at the front line and assisted the Imperial Guards in attacking Aolong Pass. The first time the aerial squadron appeared at Guiping Pass, it attracted the attention of the Lord of the Wilderness. How to defend against the incendiary bombs dropped by the aerial squadron had already become an urgent task for the cities and fortresses in the wilderness. The most long-term plan was naturally to use stone or bricks instead of wood. The incendiary bombs developed by Shanghai City could not compare to the incendiary bombs in the real world. Without combustibles, the effect would be greatly reduced. For a city, it was not realistic to use all stone. But for a fortress, it was still relatively easy to build a building without wood. However, Aolong Pass had not adopted such a measure. After the outbreak of war, Feng Qinghua urgently ordered the garrison to clean up as much as possible the combustibles in the fortress. All wooden buildings were to be torn down. The large flames rising from Aolong Pass proved that the fortress did not completely carry out Feng Qinghua's orders. Asking them to tear down the buildings was really too much. Starting from 9 in the morning, the aerial squadron used Yongren City as a temporary supply base and launched a continuous bombardment of Aolong Pass. Coupled with the Barbarian Mountain Division's attack, Aolong Pass immediately fell into a dangerous situation. Inside the fortress, besides the buildings, there were also temporary military tents. In order to prevent the fire from spreading, more than half of the garrison's energy was put into extinguishing the fire. As a result, the garrison became more and more powerless against the fierce attacks of the Barbarian Mountain Division. In just one morning, there were 3 dangerous situations on the city wall, almost being broken through by the Barbarian Mountain Division. This startled the garrison into a cold sweat. They no longer dared to slack off, desperately defending while requesting reinforcements from Black Iron City. Because of this, the 30,000 reinforcements that had just arrived at Black Iron City did not dare to stop and directly rushed towards Aolong Pass. Once Awalong Pass fell, Swordsman City's Second Corps would not have the confidence to defend Black Iron City. Just as the Swordsman City's army was gathering at Awalong Pass, who was leading the ambush army upstream. With the help of the aerial team, Huitzubing's overall plan was successfully implemented. The Second Legion of Swordsman City was lured to Aolong Pass. If nothing unexpected happened, the fall of Black Iron City was only a matter of time. Jianyang County, Swordsman City. The battle at Aolong Pass was in full swing, but the Swordsman City did not give any instructions. It was all up to the frontline generals to decide. This was not because the Feng clan was slow or arrogant. It was because there was a big change in the clan. That night, Feng Xiaodian and 2 elders from the clan conducted a checkup on Feng Qingyang. He wouldn't have known if he hadn't checked, but the moment he did, he was shocked. Feng Qingyang was already on the verge of turning into a demon, and it would be too late to save him now. Feng Qingyang was the hope of the Feng family's rise in the game. Now, the Feng family was in chaos. Even the great elder, who had been cultivating in seclusion, was alarmed. The 4 elders worked together to treat Feng Qingyang for 2 days and 2 nights before they managed to slightly control the violent true qi in his body. However, Feng Qingyang still had to slowly recuperate himself in order to completely remove the demonic qi. Feng Xiaodian did not dare to be negligent. He immediately arranged for Feng Qingyang to go into seclusion and no longer manage the territory's affairs. During this period, the entire Swordsman City was in a state of idleness. Now that Feng Qingyang was in seclusion, someone had to manage the huge territory. Feng Xiaodian had no choice but to leave the mountain and personally take charge. As the patriarch, Feng Xiaodian was not good at managing the territory. Otherwise, he would not have thrown all the territory's affairs to Feng Qingyang and Feng Qingyue. As soon as he took office, there was an overwhelming amount of government affairs, which made Feng Xiaodian dizzy. He could not even calm down during his daily cultivation and almost went berserk. In just 3 days, Feng Xiaodian had lost a lot of weight. At this time, Feng Xiaodian had to admit that he was not as good as his son, Feng Qingyang, in terms of territory management. Dragons give birth to dragons, and mice give birth to phoenixes. The father and son were of the same lineage. With this delay, the battle of the Aolong Pass had entered a critical period. Seeing this, Feng Xiaodian gritted his teeth and decided to let Feng Qingyue take over the territory as the temporary overlord. As an ancient martial arts family, the Feng clan was inevitably biased towards sons and daughters. The clan rules were rigid and conservative. Although Feng Qingyue's talent in managing the territory was far better than his brother, he could only participate in the territory's affairs as an advisor and had no authority to make decisions. Feng Qingyang went into seclusion, so Feng Xiaodian subconsciously took over the territory's management authority. He had never thought of handing the territory over to Feng Qingyue. It was only when Feng Xiaodian realized that he could not handle the territory's affairs that he came to a realization and used this rare opportunity to let Feng Qingyue take over. Even so, the clan elders still objected. One had to admit that Feng Xiaodian's decision was very wise. It prevented the Swordsman City from being destroyed. When the storm in the Feng clan gradually subsided, it was already the 24th day of the first month. Feng Qingyue took over the territory's authority and had mixed feelings. When she understood the situation at the front line and was about to summon the Shanghai city's diplomatic group to propose a peace negotiation, the front line had already undergone a shocking change. Feng Qingyue was speechless for a long time. Her face turned pale. "I'm still too late. Let's go back to 2 days ago." On the evening of the 22nd, the surging Golden Sand River surged ceaselessly. The river water was mixed with a large amount of sand and sand. Under the sunset, it appeared to be a mesmerizing golden yellow. This was the origin of the name Golden Sand River. On the river's surface, more than 1,000 small boats sailed forward. It was a spectacular sight. Who led 5,000 mountain barbarian elites upstream and finally arrived near the Black Iron City. Black Iron City was built on the southern bank of the Golden Sand River, and the river flowed around the city. The 5,000 mountain barbarians quietly disembarked when they were 20 miles away from Black Iron City. Thousands of small boats floated down the river and soon disappeared into the sunset. Rest for half an hour. Be careful to conceal yourselves. Sure, who ordered? The mountain barbarians were a group of landlubbers. It was the first time for some of the warriors to ride on a boat. Moreover, it was such a small boat. Being tossed up and down on the vast river and rocking left and right was not a pleasant experience. If not for the mountain barbarians' strong physiques, their legs would have turned to jelly by now. Just as the army was resting, an inconspicuous hummingbird accurately found Sure Hu and perched on his shoulder with an intimate expression. The hummingbird was originally introduced by the mystic bird tribe where Sure Hu was. The two of them had a natural resonance. Otherwise, the hummingbird would not have been able to accurately find Sure Hu. The information transmitted by the hummingbird shocked Sure Hu. The Shanghai Guard spies in Black Iron City had confirmed that the East City Gate would be opened at 8 o'clock that night. The city gate would be opened in 15 minutes at most. The army, please seize the opportunity. 10 minutes? That's enough. Sure Hu looked at the sky and ordered the army to set off. They quietly advanced toward Black Iron City. At 7:15, the army had already concealed themselves in the forest 4 to 5 miles away from the city. Through the gaps in the forest, they could clearly see that the city gate in the distance had already been closed. The miners outside the city had also finished their work long ago. They were either living in the mines or had already entered the city. Judging from the sparse patrols on the city wall, Black Iron City's defenses were not very tight. Sure Hu was even more confident when he saw this. At 7:50, a torch appeared on top of the city wall and swayed back and forth 3 times. When Sure Hu saw this, he was shocked. This was the secret signal that the spies in the city had agreed on with him. It indicated that everything was normal and that everything was going according to plan. Pass down the order. Prepare to move. Sure Hu quietly ordered. Yes, sir. In an instant, the mountain barbarians who had been leaning against the trees and resting quickly got up. They used the shortest amount of time to do a final check on their weapons and equipment. In less than 5 minutes, they were all lined up. The mountain barbarians, who were originally known for their loose discipline, had long since transformed into an iron-blooded army with strict military discipline under the tempering of Shanghai City's military system. The next few minutes were so tense that it was suffocating. At this time, even a small mistake could lead to the loss of the entire game. Sure Hu stared at the city gate. He did not even blink for a few minutes. At 7:56, with a creak, the drawbridge was slowly lowered. Charge! Sure Hu did not dare to delay and gave the order to charge. 5,000 mountain barbarians silently rushed out of the forest in the dark as if they were walking on flat ground. They charged toward the city gate in battle formation. In the process, the city gate had already slowly opened. As a result, the mountain barbarians charged even more fiercely. Almost at the same time, Sure Hu activated his awakened general specialty, causing the speed of the troops to increase by another level. In less than 15 minutes, the army had already arrived at the city gate. Inside the open city gate, it was pitch black. Charge in. Sure Hu was full of courage. Without thinking about anything else, he carried the heaven-splitting axe that the ruler had given him and was the first to charge into the city. The guards at the city gate were finally alarmed. They walked out in a daze and were met with an axe. Their heads fell to the ground. The massacre was carried out in the dark. After taking care of the guards at the city gate in 2 or 3 moves, Sure Hu did not dare to delay. He led his troops directly into the city lord's residence. Only by destroying the stone tablet of the city lord's residence's subsidiary territory could they be considered to have succeeded. Black Iron City was not a commercial city. At 8 o'clock at night, it was already quite cold outside. There were no signs of human habitation on the streets. The charge of the mountain barbarian soldiers completely broke the silence of the night. The Black Iron City guards who had received the news were still gathering in the camp when a mountain barbarian soldiers had already charged into the city lord's residence. Whether it was the bailiffs, the guards, or even the servants and guards in front of the mountain barbarians, they were no different from ordinary people. They were all killed in one blow. With a swish, the axe fell. The black iron city guards died under whose heaven-splitting axe. Mobile users, please browse and read for a better reading experience. Chapter 800. The unexpected fall of Black Iron City marked the beginning of a new phase in the Battle of Shu Province. Swordsman City's garrison in Jianyang County, other than the 2nd Legion that had already gathered at Awang Pass, only the Imperial Guard Division and City Guard Division were left. Other than that, there were also the local garrisons. Thus, after the fall of Black Iron City, Swordsman City fell into a predicament where they had no soldiers to send. This made Feng Qingwei, who had just taken over the territory, feel extremely awkward. She realized that with the fall of Black Iron City, Shanghai City would no longer be satisfied with the price they had previously offered. The intelligent Feng Qingwei thought even further. An iron ore base like Black Iron City was only slightly important to Swordsman City, but to Shanghai City, which had grasped the technology of steelmaking and was vigorously promoting industrialization, it was a treasure. Since Shanghai City had taken over Black Iron City, they would not give it back. Just as Feng Qingwei had guessed, even without this matter, Ouyang Shua would have found a reason to take over Black Iron City in the near future. To Shanghai City, the value of Black Iron City was even greater than a county. 23rd of January, Black Iron City. Because of the battle last night, the citizens of the city were so afraid that they could not sleep. When the cold morning light shone on the sky above the city again, this remote city that was previously inconspicuous had a new ruler. During the battle last night, who led 5,000 elites to occupy the city lord's mansion and even defeated the Black Iron City Guard Division in one fell swoop, eliminating all resistance in the city. The entire city was now firmly under the control of Shanghai City. The battle last night was not limited to battles between armies. After the barbarian warriors took control of the situation, hundreds of elite spies from the 3 intelligence agencies in Black Iron City immediately took action. Under the cover of the night, they completed beautiful assassinations. All the important people in the city who obstructed Shanghai City from taking over Black Iron City were killed. Although not many people died in the assassinations of the intelligence agencies, it was the key to paralyzing Black Iron City. If one had to make a comparison, whose troops were slaughtering, while the intelligence agencies were performing a precise surgery. Those who should be killed were killed, and those who should not have died, none of them died. In one night, Black Iron City had changed. After who took over Black Iron City, his first order was to cut off the food supply to Aolong Pass. This alone was enough to make the garrison of Aolong Pass suffer. At noon on the 23rd, the news of Black Iron City's fall reached Aolong Pass. When the commander of Swordsman City's 2nd Army received the news, he was immediately dumbfounded. This commander was not a nameless figure. He was the great general of Shu during the 3 Kingdoms period, Wei Yan. After Liu Bei took control of Chengdu, most of the generals of Shu Han, with the exception of Guan Yu and Zhang Fei, who died in battle, followed Liu Bei and served in the Chengdu Imperial Guards. In Swordsman City, Feng Qingyang of Feng of Dynasty, Feng of the King of Dynasty, Dynasty of Feng, and of Feng. The general that Feng Qingyang had chosen was Wei Yan. Feng of Yang of Iron City of Wei. When Liu Bei entered Sichuan, he was appointed as the general of the Yamen. After capturing Hanzhong, an exception was made, and he was promoted as the general of Jinyuan, commanding the governor of Hanzhong and guarding the city. During this period, Wei Yin requested Zhuge Liang to give him 10,000 troops to attack Guangzhou. After conquering Hanzhong, he was promoted to General Jinyuan. During this period, Wei Yin repeatedly asked Zhuge Liang to give him 10,000 troops so that he could take another route to attack Guangzhou. Finally, he would join forces with Zhuge Liang at the Tong Pass. But Zhuge Liang always refused. This was also one of the reasons why Wei Yan was willing to take a step back. In Wei Yan's opinion, instead of being restrained by Zhuge Liang, it was better to take a step back. Once he arrived at Swordsman City, Wei Yin was appointed as the commander of the 2nd Army by Feng Qingyang. However, Wei Yin did not expect the first battle to be so difficult. With his retreat cut off, Wei Yin did not dare to make a decision. He immediately asked Feng Qingyang if they should continue to defend Aolong Pass, recapture Black Iron City, or even withdraw. However, Feng Xiaotian was temporarily in charge of Swordsman City. Wei Yan's memorial was naturally drowned in the vast sea of books, not stirring up a single ripple. Wei Yan had no choice but to fight to the end. This lasted for an entire day. While enduring the bombardment from the sky, they also had to face the fierce attacks of the Barbarian Mountain Division. It was truly unbearable. If it weren't for Wei Yan's presence, the Dragon Cave Pass would have fallen. Even so, Swordsman City's second army suffered heavy casualties. At night, Wei Yan once again submitted a memorial to Feng Qingyang, pleading for his lord to make a decision. Otherwise, he could only act at his own discretion. To put it bluntly, Wei Yan wanted to retreat. Fortunately, Feng Qingyue took over the authority of Swordsman City the next day and read Wei Yan's memorial. This allowed Swordsman City's second army to escape the calamity. January 24th, Swordsman City. Feng Qingyue read the frontline battle report and did not dare to be negligent. On one hand, she issued an order to Wei Yan, ordering the 2nd Legion to temporarily guard the Aolong Pass. On the other hand, she urgently summoned the diplomatic mission of Shanghai City. City Lord Residence, Reception Hall. Does this mean that Swordsman City is willing to send back our Imperial Guards and compensate 800,000 gold coins for the looting of Dongchuan Prefecture? The leader of the diplomatic group sent by the Chamberlain of Dependencies said slowly with no more anxiety on his face. Obviously, the news of the Imperial Guards taking over Black Iron City had reached the ears of the diplomatic group. Feng Qingyue suppressed her anger and nodded. That's right. We accept the 2 conditions raised by Shanghai Duke and are willing to carry them out immediately. We hope that your army will withdraw from Black Iron City and cease hostilities. This lowly official has already understood the wishes of your territory. This lowly official will immediately report to the Protectorate after I come down. As for the specific decision, we will still have to hear from my lord. The leader only promised to pass on the message and did not respond to Feng Qingyue's request to withdraw. Only a fool would withdraw at this time. Feng Qingyue sighed inwardly. She knew that things weren't so simple. She helplessly said, "Then please give me an early reply. An extra day of delay is a sacrifice for the warriors of both sides." "Don't worry, Lord. This lowly official will take his leave first." With that said, he turned and left. Feng Qingyue frowned as she watched the diplomatic group leave. "I hope that your appetite isn't too big." At this moment, a black-clothed man entered the hall. Feng Qingyue asked the black-clothed man, "What's the reply from Chengdu?" Shuhan's Prime Minister Zhuge replied, "The Shuhan dynasty will not tolerate Shanghai City acting recklessly in Shu. As long as we apply, the Shuhan army will be able to reinforce Swordsman City at any time." According to the rules of the system, Royal City's army was not allowed to leave the city and fight with the Overlord's army in the wilderness. The only exception was when a territory in the wilderness applied for Royal City's protection and willingly became a vassal of Royal City. Only then, Royal City's army could send out troops in the name of protection. Even so, Royal City's army couldn't go beyond the territory that applied for protection. For a territory in the wilderness, once they applied for Royal City's protection, there would be no way out. Once they became a vassal, they would be a vassal for life. They would no longer have any autonomy. Thus, unless it was absolutely necessary, no territory would be willing to apply for protection from Royal City. Also, out of the 9 great king cities in China, not all of them could apply for protection. Only Xianyang, Luoyang, and Chengdu, which had emperors stationed in them, could accept the overlord's request for asylum. The scope of application was also limited to the province where Royal City was located. Feng Qingyue didn't feel relieved. He waved his hand tiredly and said, "I understand. You can go in the afternoon." Yes. How could Feng Qingyue not know about Shu Han's ambitions? Right now, they probably wanted Swordsman City to apply for protection so that they could use this opportunity to occupy Shu. Thus, Feng Qinghua wouldn't take this path unless it was absolutely necessary. On the same day, in Shanghai City, in the afternoon, the diplomatic missions memorial was already on Ouyang Shua's desk. After meeting with Hua Xubing in Lingxi City, Ouyang Shua didn't stay there and immediately returned to Shanghai City. The Spring Festival was approaching. As the Lord, he had to stay in Shanghai City even if there was an important matter. To the people in the territory, this was a powerful symbol that couldn't be underestimated. Thus, Ouyang Shua delayed the inspection of the 3 counties of Yunnan until after the new year. Before the war, Ouyang Shua didn't have any doubts about whether the Imperial Guards could take down Black Iron City. With Hua Xubing's ability, if he couldn't even do such a small thing, how could he be worthy of the title of Divine General? As it turned out, Hua Xubing did a good job. To be honest, Ouyang Shua didn't have much ambition for Swordsman City or the entire Shu. From the beginning, Ouyang Shua knew very well that in Shu, Shanghai City's biggest opponent was the Shu Han dynasty and not some swordsman city. Shanghai City didn't have the strength to challenge Royal City yet. Thus, he couldn't force Swordsman City too much. Even a corner dog would jump over a wall. As for when to wrestle with the Shu Han dynasty, it would be better to wait until after the nation was established. The most important thing now was to calm the war in the southern border as soon as possible and incorporate the Yunnan province into Shanghai City's governance system. This was the final sprint and preparation for the establishment of the nation. Thinking of this, Ouyang Shua picked up his brush and commented on the memorial presented by the diplomatic mission. The original 2 conditions remain unchanged. Add one more. Black Iron City and its surrounding territories must all be ceded to Shanghai City. With the mountain pass as the boundary, both sides will stop fighting and not invade each other. Ouyang Shua had long intended to learn from the operation of the steel giants in reality. He wanted to integrate all the steel mills, coking coal factories, and other factories in his territory to establish a large steel group to lay a solid foundation for the industrialization of his territory. Black Iron City, which was rich in iron, ore, and didn't lack coal, was undoubtedly the best choice. Ouyang Shua had even thought of a name for the group. It would be called Shushan Steel Group. Mobile users, please browse and enjoy a better reading experience. Chapter 801. Gaia Year 4, January 26th, Shanghai City. It was New Year's Eve in 3 days, and Shanghai City was already decorated with lanterns and streamers. The victory of the Yunnan War added a sense of jubilation to the huge city. The faces of the people were brimming with pride and glory. With the Civil Affairs Bureau's immigration plan coming to an end, Shanghai City's population was approaching the 2 million mark. Especially with Shanghai City's overwhelming victory in the Yunnan War, countless players applied to live in Shanghai City. Players with a bit of foresight had already realized that the royal city was not permanently safe. When the Lord of the Wilderness reached a certain level of strength, there was bound to be conflict between the two. War was inevitable. Who had a better chance of winning? Different people had different opinions. However, one thing was clear. Compared to the royal city, the wilderness territory had limitless potential for development. Take Shanghai City as an example. In a short 3 years, it had grown from nothing to an army of 1 million. As for the royal city, it was limited by the system's rules and had been making no progress. When the wilderness and the royal city had a conflict, or even a life and death battle, the players caught between the two had to make a choice. If they were not careful, they could become sacrifices. They had to make a decision early. However, the opening of the underground world was imminent, and the players' attention was firmly locked. There was definite news that after the Lantern Festival, the 9 Great Royal City would simultaneously issue a plot mission related to the competition for the satellite cities. Before that, the Royal City was already surging with undercurrents. When the Yunnan War broke out, there were no less than 100 large-scale PK battles between the guilds and countless small-scale conflicts. The guild circle of the 9 Great Royal City was undergoing a cruel reshuffle. For the small and medium-sized guilds, they only had 3 choices. They could move to the wilderness collectively and give up on the extravagant hopes of the underground world. Of the 36 stratagems, fleeing was the best strategy to avoid this storm. They could choose a faction and be willing to be annexed by the giants and become part of the faction, or they could completely disappear. The guild would be broken up and its members would be absorbed. In the end, it would all be for naught. There was no other choice. If anyone wanted to play tricks and link up with the small and medium-sized guilds, imitating the model of the Lord City-State to form a guild alliance, they would immediately be suppressed by the large guilds without mercy. On this point, the large guilds had a consensus. The era of small fish in the guild circle was about to be gone forever. This reshuffle was thorough, the ripples spread far and wide, and the number of deaths was unprecedented. Even the newly released expansion pack, Martial Worlds Winds, wasn't enough to change the player's focus. The 9 Great Kings City had long since opened their martial arts dojos to the public, but there were very few people who entered the dojos to learn martial arts. With the Great War at hand, players pursued speedy methods. They all hoped to improve their personal strength in the shortest time possible in preparation for the upcoming war. It was too late to learn the sect's foundational martial arts now. It would be of no help at all. If their martial arts clashed, their strength might even regress, and the gains would not make up for the losses. During this period of time, the prices of weapons and equipment, healing medicines such as gold sword medicine, and life-saving items such as substitute dolls were rising steadily. This was especially true for premium items. The price had doubled, and there was no market for them. In order to survive the war, players would not hesitate to spend gold coins. Meng Jidao reported that the Four Seas Bank's deposits for January were lower than the withdrawal amount for the first time. The bank's deposits were experiencing an unprecedented negative growth. As a result, the Bank of the Four Seas had no choice but to reduce its loans to deal with the bank run. When Lingxi City was annexed, Lingxi City's shares and debts in the Bank of the Four Seas were all transferred to Shanghai City. For this, Ouyang Shua paid Baiwa a lump sum of 500,000 gold coins as compensation. Gaia was undoubtedly a shrewd trader. The limited-time exchange event previously was not for the players to deposit the gold coins in the bank to generate interest, but for the players to spend them. The opening of the underworld and the competition for the satellite cities were Gaia's first big move. In other words, the upcoming guild war also allowed the Overlord players to make a lot of money from this feast. This was especially so for a military giant like Shanghai City. Just the orders from the allied guilds such as Snow Rose, Breeze Pavilion, and Tingle of the Rain had already exceeded 4 million gold coins. Fortunately, the war in Yunnan had just ended, and the weapons and equipment in the hands of the prisoners of war had to be changed to Shanghai City's standard equipment, freeing up over 200,000 sets of equipment. In addition to the scattered equipment collected from the battlefield, the amount was even greater. Just this alone allowed Shanghai City to earn more than 4 million gold coins. The territory's finances, which had been running dry at the end of the year, immediately turned for the better. Ouyang Shua's heroic spirit soared to the sky. He directly allocated 1,500,000 gold coins for the new round of army reorganization, as well as additional reward for the officers and soldiers who participated in the Lingnan and Yunnan battles. The moment the news spread, the entire army was in an uproar. Of course, Ouyang Shua did not discriminate. He allocated another 500,000 gold coins to reward the civil officials of the territory. In particular, those who performed outstandingly would be rewarded handsomely. Without the hard work of tens of thousands of civil officials, how could the territory prosper? 2 million gold coins was considered the year-end bonus given by the big boss, Ouyang Shua. Such a large sum of money was something that the other territories could only look up to. Afternoon, Ouyang Shua's study. In the quiet study, Ouyang Shua was summoning the newly appointed Industry Director Chun Bingguang, Industry and Development Planning Director Cui Yingyu, and Finance Director Gong Jian. The Finance Department was a newly established department of the General Finance Department. It was in charge of the territory's budget and financial distribution. It was a very important department in the General Finance Department. Gong Jian was a financial officer of the Federation in the real world, and he had a lot of experience. After being recommended by Meng Jida and the financial expert Elder Xie, he was appointed as the finance director by Ouyang Shuo after a strict investigation by the Black Snake Guards. Compared to the ancients, Gong Jian was obviously more skillful in managing the finance department. Ouyang Shuo summoned the three of them to discuss the establishment of the Shushan Steel Group. The planned Shushan Steel Group will be directly managed by the industry department. The finance department would provide financial support and supervision, and the industry and development planning department would give appropriate industrial policies. Just yesterday, Shanghai City and Swordsman City had reached a memorandum of understanding, and the war in the southwest had subsided. Feng Qingwei agreed to Ouyang Shuo's condition of ceding Black Iron City, but on top of that, he added another request. Swordsman City and Shanghai City would sign a trade agreement and trade with each other. In the details, Feng Qingwei clearly stated that he hoped that Shanghai City's steel group in Black Iron City could sell high-quality steel to Swordsman City. Ouyang Shuo was greatly surprised when he heard the news. Compared to his brother, Feng Qingyang, Feng Qingyue's methods were much more brilliant. Ouyang Shuo had no reason to refuse, but he set a limit on steel exports. The Shushan Steel Group would only export to Swordsman City if it could meet the demand of the territory itself. Feng Qingwei was worried that Ouyang Shuo was playing with words, so he added a minimum export quota. Both sides had a lot of arguments over this matter. After 4 rounds of discussion, the two finally reached an agreement on the Memorandum of Understanding. The specific terms and details were still being discussed by the officials of both sides, so Ouyang Shuo did not need to intervene. On the same day, Feng Qingwei ordered the Second Army to withdraw from Aolong Pass and Black Iron City. The Imperial Guards naturally took over the defense of Black Iron City. When the long-lived Army arrived at Black Iron City and completed the handover, the Imperial Guards would return to Shanghai City. Black Iron City was located at the southernmost part of Jiangyang County, and there was only one pass connecting it to the north. As long as the long-lived Army could guard this pass, the defense of the north could rest easy. To the west was the Chang County where the Chang tribe lived. There is a huge difference in altitude between the two places, and it was difficult for birds to fly. Only the locals could find a small path in the mountains, and it was impossible for the army to travel. The south was connected to Dongchuan County, and the Luo Shixin Army will be stationed there, ready to reinforce at any time. To the east of Black Iron City was the North Sichuan Province, which was also a high mountain and long road. There's also a pass guarding it, and the army needed to be stationed there. If necessary, the pass would be reinforced. All in all, there was not much pressure on the defense of Black Iron City. With the long-lived army, there was nothing to worry about for the time being. Even if Swordsman City joined forces with the Shu Han dynasty to attack, they would not be able to break in for a while. Because of this, Ouyang Shuo was relieved to build the Shushan Steel Group in Black Iron City. Because of this, Ouyang Shuo simply ordered to change the name of Black Iron City to Steel City. The Shushan Steel Group would be a pillar of the territory's industrialization, so it could not be neglected. The initial capital of the Steel Group will be 500,000 gold coins. With this unexpected fortune, Ouyang Shuo was even more confident, so he rushed to settle this matter before the Spring Festival. If it was before, Gong Jian would probably be the first to stand up and object. This time, the financial secretary gave the green light, and Gong Jian even said with a smile, 500,000 gold coins is only the initial budget. If we want to increase the investment in the future, the financial secretary will definitely support us, and we can still take out 300,000 to 500,000. The words of the god of fortune were indeed rich and overbearing. Ouyang Shuo glanced at Chun Bingguang and said in a half-joking, half-serious tone, "Old Chun, the Ministry of Finance has given us enough funds to build the factory, but your industry department can't be extravagant. Good steel must be used on the blade, and money must also be calculated carefully. Every penny of the territory did not come from a flood, and Ouyang Shuo, as the parent, had to keep a close eye on it." Chun Bingguang said with a gentle expression, "Lord, please rest assured." After that, the industry department will set up an audit team to be responsible for monitoring the Shushan Steel Group, and we will not spend a single copper coin. Ouyang Shuan nodded and said, the industry department also needs to keep an eye on the Number 7 Research Institute. The current steelmaking technology in the territory is not mature, and if we really want to make steel on a large scale, we need to achieve a breakthrough in technology. Understood. After the discussion, Ouyang Shuo took the opportunity to end the meeting. If they really wanted to build the framework of the Shushan Steel Group, after that, the industry department, including the other departments of the protectorate, had to do a lot of solid and meticulous work. These things could not be completed in a day or two. Just the preliminary survey, evaluation, research, and overall design, including the group's framework and related personnel arrangements, could not be completed in a month or two. It was better to be slow in the early stage than to clean up the mess later. The industry department had set up a preparatory team to be responsible for the construction of the Shushan Steel Group. Chapter 802. After dealing with the matter of the Shushan Iron and Steel Group, Ouyang Shuo was officially sealed and began his vacation. Over the past year, the various systems of the territory had been perfected, and the holiday system was one of them. Ouyang Shuo couldn't ask his officials to work 365 days a year. That was too inhumane. The territory followed the system of the Tang dynasty and formulated a detailed vacation system. Winter solstice and Yuanzheng were given 7 days of leave each. Apart from that, the Mid-Autumn Festival, the Laba Festival, the Summer Solstice, the Dragon Boat Festival, the Chongyang Festival, and other traditional festivals were all closed for 3 days. Yuanzheng, the 7-day holiday of the Spring Festival, was implemented according to the Yuanzheng, 3 days before and after the Yuanzheng. With the first day of the Lunar New Year as the center, there would be a 3-day holiday before the first day of the Lunar New Year and a 3-day holiday after the first day of the Lunar New Year. Tomorrow, January 27th, was the first day of the Spring Festival holiday. During the holidays, all levels of government offices were sealed and stopped their official business. Officials went home to celebrate the New Year and visit their relatives. They would only return to the Yamen on the 5th day of the first lunar month. As a result, Ouyang Shuo postponed the scheduled meeting of commanders until after the holiday. For the next few days, Ouyang Shuo enjoyed a rare moment of leisure. If he wasn't dressed casually, he would accompany Binger to various places in the city to enjoy the bustling scenery of Shanghai City and experience the various customs of the people. If not, he would spend his time with Song Jia under the moonlight, lovey-dovey. From time to time, he would go to Southwest University China Hall to drink wine and play chess with Tai Gong, or pay a visit to Confucius and listen to the teachings of the sages. Sometimes he would go to the tea house to listen to songs, watch dances, and drink tea. In the blink of an eye, 2 to 3 hours would pass. In his spare time, he would also go to the back garden to watch the flowers perform their swordplay, teasing the lucky beast Kiaichi who had already settled down in the garden. Sometimes he would simply sit alone in the pavilion in a daze, thinking of nothing and doing nothing. No one was allowed to see him. On New Year's Eve, Ouyang Shuo held a banquet in the main hall to celebrate with the people. As for Gaia's New Year's Eve activities, Ouyang Shuo was no longer interested. On the other hand, Binger received another huge gift from Gaia. Her face was beaming with joy. On the first day of the Lunar New Year, there would be an unshakable sacrificial ceremony. The only change was that Song Jia, as the wife of the protectorate of the southern border, had appeared with Ouyang Shuo. There was also a small interlude during this time. While worshipping the Yellow Emperor, the sound of a system notification entered Ouyang Shuo's ears. System notification. Congratulations to player not have clothes. Your territory's auspicious beast, Chi 1, has been affected by the sacrificial event and has triggered an auspicious sign. Sweeping golden dragon. Congratulations, player. Just as he finished speaking, a dragon's roar suddenly came from the sky above the heavenly altar. Looking up, he saw a golden dragon appear out of thin air, swimming around in the sky. The golden scales were dazzling and eye-catching. This immediately shocked everyone present. Those who were qualified to participate in the sacrificial ceremony were all important ministers of the territory. How could they not be excited when they saw such a phenomenon? Xiaohe then spoke up. "My lord, the appearance of the golden dragon is a sign of an emperor. It is suitable for us to establish a nation." Ouyang Shua nodded and didn't reply directly. It wasn't good to boast at this time, right? Without a doubt, this auspicious aura provided a basis for the establishment of Shanghai City. It immediately unified the territory and increased the loyalty of the officials in the territory, as well as the popularity of the people. Since there was such an auspicious sign, it was naturally what the people wanted. On the second day of the new year, all sorts of lantern festivals and temple fairs were held in Shanghai City. The auspicious sign from the previous day had already been put on stage by storytellers, entertainers, and all sorts of other people to promote the appearance of an emperor, further clearing the obstacles to the establishment of the territory and to guide public opinion. Even the major media outlets had detailed reports on this matter. When Di Chun and the others saw this, they were shocked. They realized that Ouyang Shua was creating momentum. His goal was to create an unstoppable momentum in the entire wilderness and establish the prestige of the country. Even so, they were powerless to stop it. It was truly bitter. Affected by this, more and more people with special abilities were willing to settle down in Shanghai City. This was the general trend. No one could stop it. From a second day of the new year, Ouyang Shua followed the crowd and appeared at the various temple fairs with Bing'er and Songjia, causing waves of commotion. Every time he went out, the divine martial guards would clear the way. The entire journey was strictly guarded, and there was an indescribable majesty. During this period, Little Ant brought Xie over once. It could be considered a reunion dinner. Amidst the clamor, Gaia's fourth year of the new year quietly came to an end. It was a new year, Gaia's fourth year, 3rd of February, 5th of the first month. On the first day of the holiday, Ouyang Shua held the first court meeting of the new year. During the court meeting, Xiaohe, Wei Yong, family, and Du Ruhui jointly submitted a memorial. They proposed to officially put the establishment of the country on the agenda and make it the top priority of the new year. Ouyang Shua did not decline this time and agreed on the spot. It was definitely not a simple matter for Shanghai City to establish a country. Other than the rigid condition of Shanghai City being promoted to a capital city, there were other major matters that needed to be carried out. The first was to establish the country's name. The matter of a country's name was no trivial matter. It concerned the destiny of the entire territory and the foundation of the country. Everything had a process. If one started from scratch and had to go through hardships, it would be difficult to obtain destiny if the foundation was not stable. Just like the current Shanghai City, the name Shanghai was just a miscellaneous name that was not recorded in history. Therefore, no matter how heaven-defying the characteristics of Shanghai City's territory were, it was difficult to attract true geniuses who would willingly serve it. This meant that the foundation was not stable. In history, the Qin dynasty had the water virtue. The water virtue was black, which referred to the aura of ghosts and gods. It was not suitable for the mortal world. Humans had black aura and were close to the netherworld. The country's lifespan was not long. The Qin dynasty overturned the previous system of kings, abolished the feudal system, and proclaimed themselves as emperors. They were the pioneers of history. Since they were pioneers, they did not have any foundation. As a result, they died in 3 generations. The Han dynasty succeeded the Qin system. With the Qin dynasty paving the way, it slowly turned into the fire virtue. After that, the successive dynasties, with the Qin dynasty's accumulation, had successfully established the way of the emperor. It had set a foundation in the world, and the successors would inherit it. Therefore, there was no need to start from scratch. Not only the dynasties, even the titles of princes and princes were very particular. Generally speaking, other than the crown prince, the other sons of the first wife or the sons of concubines that the emperor doted on would be conferred the title of king. For example, the king of Qin, the king of Jin, the king of Qi, the king of Chu, the king of Zhao, the king of Wei, the king of Zheng, etc. Among them, the titles of Qin, Jin, Qi, and Chu were the most respected because they represented the most powerful states during the spring and autumn and warring states periods. The sons of the emperor's brothers and the imperial concubines of higher status would also be conferred the title of prince. For example, the Prince of Yu, the Prince of Wu, the Prince of Shu, the Prince of Dai, the Prince of Wei, the Prince of Qi, the Prince of Han, the Prince of Lu, the Prince of Liang, etc. The other concubines' titles were not as good. For example, Hua Wang, Mi Wang, Tung Wang, Jing Wang, Liang Wang, Yi Wang, Su Wang, and so on. Below the imperial prince, there was still the imperial prince, which was even more inferior. The title of Jun Wang was usually 2 characters and was conferred after the name of the county. For example, the Jun Wang of Changshan, the Jun Wang of Lingling, the Jun Wang of Langjie, the Jun Wang of Zhongshan, the Jun Wang of Beiping, the Jun Wang of Hejian, the Jun Wang of Jiangxia, and so on. They could also be referred to as the king of Changshan, the king of Lingling, the king of Langjie, the king of Zhongshan, the king of Beiping, the king of Hejian, the king of Jiangxia, etc. Therefore, when it came to king titles, it wasn't just king titles. It represented luck and foundation. As such, when overlord players established a country, it was best to inherit an ancient title. They would inherit the foundation of the dynasty and would not need to start from scratch. The foundation of the territory would be stable. Past rebellions did not understand this. They would often call themselves kings in other places, create inferior king titles, or even king titles that had never appeared before. This kind of new king title was possible, but it was like a branch stuck in the ground. For it to grow, it had to first take root. However, taking root required time and luck. When heroes fought for hegemony, every bit of luck was used on the struggle for hegemony. There was no time left to build a foundation. As such, all of the rebellions had failed. Instead, they helped the successors. For example, the Chun Sheng and Wu Guang revolts had created the Great Han Dynasty. The Yellow Turban revolts had created the Wei Jin Dynasty. The Sui Dynasty's rapid rise and fall had created the Great Tang Empire. All of these things were like this. In the wilderness, starting from the Qin Dynasty, all the important dynasties would appear in the wilderness one by one. If overlord players did not know what was good for them and used Qin, Han, Tang, Song, Yuan, Ming, etc. when establishing a country, there would be a lot of trouble. In order to maintain legitimacy, the imperial city that inherited the country's name had the right to declare war on that territory. The final result would be a fight to the death. Only one of the two could survive and continue the country's name. If there was a lord that was confident in destroying the corresponding imperial city, it was not impossible. Ouyang Shua did not have this ambition for now. Therefore, there were only 2 choices in front of Shanghai City. The first was to choose a country from the spring and autumn warring states. Qi, Chu, Zhao, and Zheng were all good choices. During the 3 Kingdoms period, the Wei, Wu, and Shu Han all used this method. This included the 16 kingdoms of the Southern Dynasty, as well as the 5 dynasties and 10 kingdoms. Among the countries, it was best not to touch the Qin, Wei, and Jin dynasties that had historical dynasties. Otherwise, there might be a day when there would be a dispute over the country's name. Even if the country did not take over the imperial city in the future, there was a chance that they could establish a foundation in the wilderness. Just like Xiang used West Chu. Before West Chu was destroyed, it was best for the overlord not to choose the country's name Chu. The second was to go back a bit and choose one of the 3 ancient names Yakama, Sheng, and Zhou. These 3 dynasties did not appear in the wilderness, and they were the start of all dynasties, so they were not bad choices. Wu Zetian changed Tang to Zhou and established the Wuzhou dynasty. In the wilderness, these country names were first come, first served. Once it was used by an overlord player, later generations would not be able to use it. If they wanted to use it, the only way was to destroy the country and empty the name of the country again. It would be extremely difficult for later generations to achieve this. Ouyang Shua was more inclined to the second option. There were only 3 ancient country names, and they were the 3 most important ones. However, in the royal court, Ouyang Shua did not express his opinion. He only let the ministers discuss it before making a decision. Chapter 803. The establishment of a nation required not only the establishment of a title, but also the establishment of a system. The structure of the Southern Border Protectorate began from the village era. It went through 3 levels: town, county, and prefecture. Step by step, it was expanded and adjusted according to the needs of the territory's development. Now, the entire structure was becoming more and more perfect. After the establishment of a nation, it was not advisable to change the structure of the dynasty or it would destabilize the nation. Therefore, the system had to be sorted out one last time before the establishment of a nation. The cabinet that Ouyang Shua had previously envisioned had to be settled before that. Especially the cabinet, as the core governing body of the dynasty, it had to be presided over by a mighty figure. According to the system, the cabinet did not wield any real power. This also meant that Xiao He, Wei Yang, and family, who held real power, had no right to enter the cabinet. If they wanted to enter the cabinet, they had to resign from their current positions. The selection of the cabinet elders was the most important matter for Ouyang Shua. Ouyang Shua had wanted to invite Jiang Shang into the cabinet. A few days ago, when he was playing chess with great-grandfather, he had unintentionally mentioned it. Great-grandfather did not directly reject it. If he really wanted to invite him, Ouyang Shua would have to put in more effort. Other than the establishment of a title and a system, the protectorate had to be renovated and upgraded into a palace. Correspondingly, palace maids and eunuchs had to be selected to maintain the daily operations of the palace. The fortifications of the entire palace also had to undergo a complete upgrade. With the release of the expansion pack, Martial World's Winds and Turns, the martial world that was hidden in the wilderness would gradually surface. The emergence of martial experts would naturally raise the security of the palace to a higher standard. To martial artists, the palace would be an absolute forbidden ground. They would not be allowed to roam freely in the palace. As for the preparations for the coronation ceremony, there was no need for Ouyang Shua to worry about it. There were people handling it. There were even ministers in the imperial court that suggested for the emperor to take in concubines to enrich the harem. When Ouyang Shua heard this, he flatly rejected it, leaving no room for negotiation. He was very clear that this was not transmigration after all. It was just a training experience for overlord players in the game. The protagonists of the game were still players living in modern society. They were a group of modern people. No matter how much Ouyang Shua abided by the ancient system, he could not use it as an excuse to have multiple wives. That was a form of disrespect to love, songjia, and even women. Some of the bad habits of the ancient dynasties had to be resolutely abandoned. There was no room for discussion. From now on, no matter when or where, you're not allowed to bring up this kind of suggestion. Otherwise, I can only conclude that this person harbors evil intentions. Ouyang Shua said. When the officials heard this, their hearts turned solemn. From then on, the concubine would become a taboo topic, and no one would dare to mention it again. After a small interlude, the imperial court meeting officially came to an end. After that, the territory would enter the establishment period, and all sorts of affairs would revolve around the establishment. February 4th, the Southern Border Protectorate, Martial Heroic Hall. Early in the morning, Ouyang Shua summoned all the divine generals and held a military conference that had been decided before the new year. The participants included Director of Military Affairs Du Ruhui, Commander-in-Chief of the Nanyang Navy Zhang He, Commander of the Imperial Guard Hua Tsubing, Commander of the Dragon Stallion Army Bai Chi, Commander of the Stallion Tiger Army Sun Bin, and Commander of the Hidden Leopard Army Han Xian. Because the participants were mainly the commanders of the army, it was called the Commanders' Conference. The commanders' meeting started at 8 in the morning and continued all the way to 6:30 in the evening before coming to an end. During this period, he only paused for half an hour during lunchtime. At the end of the meeting, all the divine generals were in high spirits. The next day, according to the minutes of the meeting, the General Administration of Military Affairs compiled a detailed military reorganization plan overnight and submitted it to Ouyang Shua. After Ouyang Shua's review and approval, the largest reorganization of the entire army would be launched. The first to be adjusted was the Nanyang Navy. The Jiaozhou Fleet, commanded by Shi Lang, was officially renamed the Izhou Fleet and moved from the Jiaozhou port of Jinhai City to the Xinglong port in the south of Izhou County. In reality, the Xinglong port was also a large global port, large enough to accommodate the Izhou Fleet. As the largest island in China, Izhou Island was more than 70% mountainous and hilly, and the plains were mainly concentrated in the narrow and long areas along the western coast. It was such a unique geographical environment that allowed the army of Shanghai City to successfully capture Izhou Island. During the war, both fleets cruised along the coast and cooperated with the ground forces to attack the cities. However, those who resisted stubbornly would be attacked by the warship's cannons. Like the Li tribe of Jingzhou Island, the Gaoshan tribe of Izhou Island was also spread throughout the island. After Overlord City captured Izhou Island, they built 3 cities on the western coast of the island, in the north, south, and middle sections. The names of the cities were simple: Yinbei City, Yinzhongqing, and Yinan City. Then, with the 3 cities as the core, 3 prefectures were established to manage the entire territory of Izhou Island. The Xinglong port was located in Yinan City, which was also the administrative center of Izhou County that Ouyang Shua had delineated. The Izhou Fleet would use Izhou County as a base to cover the Dongsha Islands and take over the Izhou Straits. To the north, they could advance into the East Sea. To the south, they could deter the Luzon Kingdom. To the east, they could enter the Luzon Sea and then advance into the Pacific Ocean. The fleet that was also renamed was the North Bay Fleet, commanded by Zhou Yu. The Battle of Black Iron City fully exposed a fatal weakness of the territory's navy, which was that they overemphasized naval operations and neglected to cooperate with the land forces in inland water systems. The territory's 3 major provinces all had developed water systems that were enough to support the fleet's shuttle back and forth. For this reason, the commanders' meeting decided to rename the North Bay Fleet as the Southern Frontier Fleet. The station would be moved from a North Sea port of Beihai City to the Jiaozhou port of Jinhai City. The maritime defense area of the North Bay would be completely handed over to the Cliff Mountain Fleet. More importantly, the Southern Frontier Fleet would be committed to inland operations, with the 5 major formations as the core, extending their tentacles into the 3 major provinces to ensure that they could cooperate with the land forces at any time. Jinhai City was just a mobile station for the Southern Frontier Fleet. In the future, when the time was right, the entire fleet would be divided into parts and gradually penetrate into the depths of the inland, completely bidding farewell to naval operations. In this way, Zhou Yu's commanding ability could be better utilized. The headquarters of the Southern Frontier Fleet that Ouyang Shua had envisioned was located in Panyang Lake in Jiangchuan Province. Panyang Lake was the largest freshwater lake in China. After the game map was expanded 10 times, it became even more vast and boundless, enough to support a Southern Frontier Fleet. However, Jiangchuan Province did not belong to Shanghai City for the time being, so this matter could only be considered at length. With the renaming of the 2 major fleets, the Nanyang Navy's activities were no longer limited to Nanyang. In view of this, the name Nanyang Navy was somewhat inappropriate and could not keep up with the development of the situation. After Ouyang Shua discussed with Zheng He, they decided to simply cancel the designation of Nanyang Navy and rename the Nanyang Navy headquarters that had already been established as Navy Headquarters. The 5 major naval fleets were unified under the command of the Navy headquarters. In addition to changing the names of the fleets, adjusting the fleet defense area, and establishing the Navy headquarters. This time, the commanders' meeting also reshaped the personnel structure of the entire Navy. The purpose was to warm up in advance for the future industrialization of the Navy. The first was to establish the Marine Corps. With the Frogman Brigade as the foundation, A powerful Marine Corps would be established to cooperate with the fleet for landing operations. In the Battle of Ijo Island that had just ended, it was precisely because the Cliff Mountain Fleet and the Jiaozhou Fleet lacked the strength to engage in landing operations that they had no choice but to seek the cooperation of the brave Tiger Army's Third Corps to be able to take down Ijo Island. In the future, the Navy would engage in expeditionary operations, and most of the time, they would not be able to get the cooperation of the Army. Therefore, within the Navy system, it was very necessary to establish a Marine Corps for amphibious operations. For the territory, the Marine Corps was a new thing that was still in the exploration stage. Therefore, Ouyang Shuo did not want to bite off more than he could chew. The establishment of the Marine Corps was temporarily set as a division. The members of the Marine Corps would be jointly selected from the soldiers of the 5 major fleets, as well as the prisoners of war from the Battle of Yunnan. In order to train the Marine Corps into shape, Ouyang Shuo specifically instructed Viper, who was in charge of the Special Operations Training Base, to build a specialized Marine Corps training base in Beihai Port. The purpose was naturally to train the ability of the members in amphibious operations. After the Marine Corps, which was directly under the Navy command, was trained and tested in actual combat, the 5 major fleets would use it as a foundation to establish their own Marine Corps. The whole process was estimated to take 6 months to a year. The second was to adjust the composition of the 5 major fleets. Among the soldiers of the 5 major fleets, other than the cannoneers and a small number of musketeers, in order to cooperate with long-range operations, the archers were mainly used, accounting for more than 70%. In ancient times, there was nothing wrong with using cold weapons to fight on water. However, the future naval battles would be a showdown between cannons and guns. No matter how powerful the archers were, they would only be live targets. Therefore, the commanders' meeting decided that in the 4th year of Gaia, the 5 major fleets would gradually reduce the number of archers. Within a year, the proportion of archers would be reduced to less than 40%. A portion of the vacated soldiers would be used to establish a Marine Corps directly under the fleet to enhance the strength of the fleet for landing operations. The remaining soldiers will be mainly inclined to the cannoneers and musketeers. In particular, musketeers would be the main force of the Navy in the future. There were similarities between archers and musketeers, so it was not difficult to switch professions. Of course, reducing the proportion of archers did not mean giving up on sharp weapons like crossbows, especially the king of long-range cold weapons like the divine armed crossbow. Not only could it not be given up, it had to be strengthened. In the future, the divine armed crossbow would become the standard for the soldiers. Similarly, the standard was the new generation of standard Tang saber that the Equipment Research Center was developing, codenamed T1. This Tang saber was especially developed for the soldiers. It combined the advantages of the Tang saber and the Western saber. It was light and sharp. It was most suitable for the soldiers in close combat, and it was their last line of defense. The third was to adjust the bases of the 5 major fleets. Other than their main bases, the 5 major fleets would also establish 3 to 4 bases in the main coastal cities of their respective defensive zones in Gaia for years, so as to strengthen their control over the sea. A fleet of more than 100,000 soldiers gathered at a military port would not only be a burden on the port, it would also be detrimental to emergency operations. The mobilization of the troops would be a step slower. Chapter 804. In addition to adjusting the Navy, the most important thing in this meeting was the reorganization of the Army. The first adjustment was the Imperial Guards. In the Battle of Yongren City, the 1st Imperial Guard Legion was crippled and then resurrected. After Swordsman City returned 15,000 prisoners of war, the Imperial Guards suffered very little damage. Hua Tsubing, the commander of the Imperial Guards, had a very distinct fighting style. He was good at cavalry warfare and liked to fight in motion, long-distance raids, surprise attacks, and surprise attacks. However, Hua Tsubing was not used to storming. The existence of the mountain barbarian heavy infantry was a hindrance to Hua Tsubing. One of the reasons for the defeat of Yongren City was that the 1st Imperial Guard Legion was badly mixed up and could not form an effective combination of mobility. The mountain barbarian heavy infantry, armored beast cavalry, and light cavalry were disjointed. This not only restricted Hua Xiubing, the divine general, but it was also a waste to the mountain barbarian heavy infantry, the trump card of the territory. After discussion in the meeting, it was decided to reorganize the Imperial Guards. The biggest change was the 1st Imperial Guard Legion. The first was to take out the Armored Beast Division of the 1st Imperial Guard Legion and reorganize it into a cavalry division directly under the Imperial Guards. The Armored Beast Division was the trump card of the heavy cavalry. It was only suitable for entering the battlefield at critical moments. It was also a special unit of Shanghai City. After being directly under the army, it would be convenient for Hua Xiubing to command. The second was to take out the 2 cavalry divisions of the 1st Imperial Guard Legion and reorganize 3 cavalry divisions from the prisoners of war to form the 3rd Imperial Guard Legion. In this way, the Imperial Guards would have 2 pure cavalry legions. Ouyang Shua's choice for the commander of the 3rd Imperial Guard Legion was the fierce General Lu Bu. Lu Bu's bravery combined with Hua Xiubing's intelligence would ferment a different kind of battle effect. Lu Bu and Ma Chao, the strongest generals of the 3 kingdoms, would compete on the same stage again. The third was to reorganize the mountain barbarians gathered during the Yunnan War into the 1st Imperial Guard Legion. The 50,000 mountain barbarians had gone through the baptism of the Yunnan War, and there were only 46,000 left. They could no longer be considered rookies. This reorganization would select the best of the best and compress them into 3 mountain barbarian heavy infantry divisions. This way, the 1st Imperial Guard Legion would be a pure mountain barbarian army. With the establishment of the nation at hand, Shanghai City could not be without a strong military presence. Therefore, the 1st Legion of the Imperial Guards would be stationed in King City, becoming the only permanent army in Shanghai City. Ouyang Shu even gave it the name Monolith Army to show his respect of the army. In order to facilitate management, Shi, who was appointed as the 1st Legion's Deputy Legion Commander, in charge of the 1st Legion's daily military affairs. Hua Xiubing's main focus was still on external expeditions. He mainly commanded the 2 cavalry legions. To say, once the above 3 points were done, the Imperial Guards would be able to go into battle even more lightly equipped than before. To be, they would be, they, and to, taking care of both inside and outside, with a balance of offense and defense. He lived up to his reputation as the trump card of the territory. To generals. They was to army. Army Imperial. This would also further liberate the army commanders, allowing them to focus more on the army's military affairs. The 3 deputy army commanders had all been promoted from division commanders within the army, so they could be considered internal promotions. The deputy commander of the 1st Dragon Stallion Legion was Zhao Bonu, the most important general under Hua Xiubing's command. The deputy commander of the 1st Tiger Legion was Chao Yu. The Leopard Legion had chosen Wei Zhang. None of the 3 deputy commanders had the potential to be promoted to commander, but they were all experts. Placing them in the 1st Imperial Guard Legion was an optimal allocation of resources. Although the Imperial Guard Legion had been added, there were only 40,000 captives. Thus, the remaining captives could be reorganized into 2 more field legions. Of the 2 quotas, one was given to the city guards to form the 2nd Imperial Guard Legion. Ouyang Shuo chose the female general, Mu Ging, as the commander. Mu Ging was not only a veteran general of the territory, but she was also from Mulan City. She was very familiar with the Lian province basin, and, as a female general, she was a good match for Eli. As such, with 2 city guard legions on the outside and the monolith army on the inside, even if Shanghai City was promoted to a capital city and its population increased exponentially, it would still be able to sit back and relax. There was no need to worry about small fries causing trouble. For the time being, the city guards did not have a commander. Eli and Mu Ging were the 2 commanders, neither managing the other. The remaining quota was given to the Leopard Legion to form the 4th Imperial Guard Legion. Chen Yuqing, The commander of the 1st Division of the Leopard Legion's 2nd Imperial Guard Legion was the young general of the Taiping Army. Chun Yuqing's ascension signified that the Taiping Army was quietly rising in the army. Among the generals of Shanghai City, the Taiping Army generals were the most special. This was because they had all seen cannons, muskets, and other firearms. They were not the traditional generals of history. Putting the Taiping Army generals in important positions was also a warm-up for future military reforms. In addition to Chun Yuqing, there were also Li Xiuqing and Xiao Chaogui. When the time was right, Ouyang Shuo would also promote them to the position of commander. In addition, Shi Dakai, who had left Tianjin City after the coup in Tianjin, had recently changed his mind and settled down in Shanghai City. He was currently studying in the Army's martial arts lecture hall. As the strongest general of the Taiping Army, Shi Dakai's arrival excited Ouyang Shuo. He had a secret talk with Shi Dakai, completely untangling the knot in his heart and gaining Shi Dakai's loyalty. After his study, Shi Dakai would take up a post in the army. Name, Shi Dakai. Title, Shi Gondang Dynasty, Qing Dynasty. Identity, General of Shanghai City. Occupation, Special General. Loyalty, 75 points. Commander, 85 martial strength, 85 intelligence, 70 politics, 70 specialty, literary and military strategy, raises troop morale by 40, troop cohesion by 30, troop attack power by 20. Technique, foot jabbing punch. Equipment, omitted evaluation, outstanding in literary and military strategy, brave and fearless, upright, gentle, and clean. Shi Dakai could be said to be the most legendary general of the Taiping Heavenly Kingdom. He was invited to leave the mountains at the age of 16, commanded thousands of troops at the age of 19, and was made a king at the age of 20. He died a heroic death at the age of 32. In history, Shi Dakai had once forced the commander of the Xiong army, Zheng Guofan, to commit suicide by drowning himself in the river. If it weren't for the internal strife in the Taiping Heavenly Kingdom that forced Shi Dakai to return to Tianjin, Zheng Guofan would have met his end. Zheng Guofan was the head of the 4 famous ministers of the late Qing dynasty, the founder of the Xiong army, and one of the initiators of the Westernization movement. He was appointed the governor of Liangyang, the governor of Zhili, and the grand secretary of the Marshal Hall. He was conferred the title of Marquis Resolute and Brave, with the posthumous title of Wenjun. To be able to force such an extraordinary person into a corner was a testament to Shi Dakai's outstanding talent. Not only could Shi Dakai lead troops to war, but his martial arts skills were also extraordinary, and he practiced both internal and external martial arts. The Peking Martial Arts Academy lecture notes even listed him, along with Su Xianping, Patriarch Bodhidharma, Emperor Taizu of Song, Yu Wumu, Zhang Sanfeng, Qi Jiguang, and Gan Fengqi as the most outstanding boxing masters in China's history. The jabbing kick fist, also known as the hero of the Northern Kick, was created by Shi Dakai. Shi Dakai taught this martial art to the selected soldiers so that they would be invincible in battle. What was even more difficult was that Shi Dakai was not only well-versed in military affairs, but also in political affairs. In the autumn of 1853, after Shi Dakai arrived in Anhui, he organized for the people to register their residences, elected officials at the grassroots level, and held imperial examinations to attract talents. He established a 3-tier administrative system at the provincial, prefectural, and county levels, giving the Taiping Heavenly Kingdom the scale of country. At the same time, Shi Dakai also enforced military discipline, restored public order, provided relief to the poor, and consoled the suffering. He made sure that farmers, merchants, and merchants were able to work in peace. He also formulated tax laws and collected taxes to provide the resources needed for the Taiping Heavenly Kingdom's political and military activities. If such a talent had not been born in the Taiping Heavenly Kingdom, he would surely have been a peerless figure. It was no wonder that Gaia had directly rated Shi Dakai as an imperial-level historical general. Shi Dakai had no shortcomings in any of his 4 attributes. Even among imperial-level generals, he was an outstanding existence. How could Ouyang Shua not be excited to have such a great general serve him? Other than reorganizing the army, the Conference of Commanders also made important arrangements for the defense of the three war zones. After taking over the Yunnan province, Shanghai City had the capital to establish a country with three provinces. It was enough to stand tall in the wilderness of the China region, unshakable by others. For at least half a year, or even longer, Shanghai City would not attack internally. The overall strategy of the territory would shift from internal to external. It would begin to attack the ASEAN countries and the predetermined Morocco. As the saying goes, to resist foreign aggression, one must first stabilize the interior. If Ouyang Shua wanted to instigate a war and go overseas, he had to first ensure the safety of his home. After the three provinces were connected, the south was either the coastline or the national border, so there was no need to worry for the time being. The west was also the national border, so there was no need to worry. The east was the Minnan province, so there was no need to worry. However, with the change in the dragon-seeking acupuncture point, he had to take some precautions. The main thing was to prevent the dragon-seeking acupuncture point from being instigated by the Yanwang alliance. It was because of this that Ouyang Shua arranged for the brave Tiger Army to be stationed in Chaozhou County. The biggest threat to the territory still came from the north. Although the three major powers, Chuanbei City, Xiangnan City, and Swordsman City, had temporarily made peace with Shanghai City and even signed a trade agreement to trade with each other. However, everyone knew that there were too many uncertainties in this. Because of this, more than 70% of the three war zones forces were deployed at the northern border. The Conference of Commanders this time was to coordinate the three war zones' northern defense zone, so that they could cooperate and not fight separately. The second was to build a large number of war fortresses at the border from point to line, forming a complete northern defense line, instead of concentrating the army in one place. If not, Ouyang Shua would not be able to set his mind at ease. Chapter 805. This round of reorganization was expected to last until the middle of March. Once the conference was over, the divine generals would return to their barracks and cooperate with the General Administration of Military Affairs in reorganizing the army while they rested and trained in preparation for the next major battle. The matter of constructing a fortress on the northern border also needed to be set up immediately and could not be delayed. That was especially true for Bai Qi. It was not easy at all. The Dragon Stallion army not only had to clean up the remaining poison in the three counties of Yunnan, but they also had to keep an eye on Dali Commandery. More importantly, the Dragon Stallion Army's headquarters had to be moved to Yunnan province, and a new headquarters and barracks had to be built outside of Lingxi City. The combat division also had to work with the Dragon Stallion Army to prepare rations and fodder. The Dragon Stallion Army had suffered heavy losses in the Battle of Yunnan, and all its divisions had suffered casualties. The newly recruited soldiers also had to work with each other through training to help them integrate into the system of Shanghai City. In short, there were many complicated matters to attend to, and it was not as if they could relax just because there was no war. Fortunately, Bai Qi had been a soldier for a long time, so he was very skilled at handling military affairs. He would not be able to adapt to being away from the barracks for a long time. It was not just Bai Qi. The three newly appointed governors of the three counties of Yunnan were not having an easy time either. In order to organize their subordinates as quickly as possible, they had even given up on the New Year's holiday. It was reported that they were even working overtime on the most important New Year's Eve. There was no need to mention Chao Can. The Donchuan commandery he had inherited was a complete mess. Not only did he have to heal the wounds of the common people, but he also had to deal with the debt demands of the aristocrats and merchants. Zhu Jin's request for compensation from Hua, Tubing, and Yongren City was not an isolated case. Every county that had been looted by the Swordsman City army would run to the newly established Yamen to demand an explanation. As the governor of a county, how could Chao Can have peace? Especially after Swordsman City compensated Shanghai City with 800,000 gold coins, the the merchants became even fiercer in their debt demands. These merchants had sharp noses, and nothing could escape their notice. Chowkin could only brace himself and report to the Protectorate Office for a decision from the General Administration of Finance. Strangely enough, Family immediately replied that the General Administration of Finance would take out 200,000 gold coins from the 800,000 to compensate the aristocrats and merchants who had been looted by the Dongchuan Commandery. Not only that, but the Bank of the Four Seas would also open branches in Dongchuan Prefecture within a month. The Bank of the Four Seas would give preferential loans to the merchants who were robbed. Although the funds allocated by the General Administration of Finance was only half of the looted amount, the merchants were satisfied with the loan support. They were even overjoyed. Although they were making a ruckus, they didn't really expect to get any compensation. As the saying goes, every injustice has its perpetrator, every debt has its debtor. No matter how hard they tried to collect the debt, they would not be able to trace it to the newly established yamen. The merchants were doing this because they wanted to gain sympathy in front of the new superior, so that their future business would more or less be taken care of by the government and not be too exploited. It could only be said that these merchants did not understand Shanghai City at all. In the entire wilderness, other than Lord Chunshin's Danyang City, Shanghai City had the most complete commercial system. The status of the merchants was also rather high, and they would not receive any unfair treatment. It was even more impossible for the government to exploit merchants. On the contrary, since the beginning of the territory's construction, Ouyang Shuo, the Lord, had been supporting the territory's business to flourish, and he worked hard to create a relaxed business atmosphere. As long as the merchants paid their taxes on time, and at the same time, they would have no more worries. Shanghai City did this, but the other territories in the wilderness were not the same. They were either influenced by the aristocrats and bureaucrats who looked down on the merchants, or they were pretending to be ignorant and more or less exploited the merchants. There's nothing we can do, we're poor. The merchants did not dare to resist, and the lords naturally felt more at ease when they exploited them. It was reported that some territories' exploitation of the merchants had reached an appalling level, and they were basically treating the merchants as money bags. When they ran out of money or wanted to build an army, they would be exploited out of habit. The previous territories of Dongchuan Commandery were mostly like this. Because of this, even Zhu Jin, an outsider from Dali Royal City, did not dare to pester Hu Xiubing a second time after he was rejected by him in Yanran City. In comparison, the General Administration of Finance's actions this time were too benevolent, so benevolent that the merchants did not dare to believe it and felt like they were in a dream. After confirming it, they were naturally ecstatic. The merchants' approval of the new government shot up like a rocket. Ouyang Shuo was very much in agreement with Fan Li's actions. Compared to Chao Can, the prefectural governor, Fan Li was clearly more far-sighted, and he looked at the problem more thoroughly. First, should they pay compensation? Yes. When the Imperial Guards attacked Yanran City for the first time, Dongchuan Commandery had already belonged to Shanghai City. The series of events that happened afterwards only served to prove one thing. Ouyang Shuo failed to protect the people under his rule. Let's say that your people were robbed by the enemy, and now you've helped them seek justice and even received double the compensation. Don't tell me you're going to take all the compensation for yourself? Impossible. Therefore, there was nothing wrong with Fan Li's actions. What was even more brilliant was that Fan Li only paid half of the compensation and used preferential loans as a disguised form of compensation. Through this method, Fan Li was also secretly warning the merchants of Dongchuan Commandery, be content, don't push your luck. Merchants had always been a group of greedy fellows, born to pursue profits. Since they were greedy, they did not know what satisfaction was. Once Shanghai City lowered its stance too much, these fellows would take advantage of it. In this way, Chao Can, the prefectural governor of Dongchuan Commandery, would not have an easy time in the future. Fan Li only paid half of the compensation. Although it seemed stingy, it was actually brilliant. Coupled with the preferential loans promised by the Bank of the Four Seas, it was enough to restore the destroyed businesses of Dongchuan Commandery to prosperity in a short period of time. From this small matter, one could see the political wisdom of the director of finance. How could a saint-level historical figure be ordinary? If one felt that they did not perform well, that was only because they had not truly acknowledged them. And the current fan, Li had undoubtedly integrated into the system of Shanghai City. Besides the prefectural governor of Dongchuan Commandery, the other two governors did not have it easy either. The prefectural governor of Mengding, Tian Wenjing, was even more miserable. The Mengding commandery that he had taken over was the one that had been most thoroughly attacked by the Dragon Stallion army. At least 10% of the youths in the commandery had died at the hands of the Dragon Stallion army. This was a blood feud. Even now, the officials of the various prefectures and counties would occasionally be attacked by the locals on their way to their posts. For this reason, the Zhongliao Corps stationed in Tingyue Commandery had no choice but to send a division to guard these officials. The public security within the commandery was simply terrible. If the people's hearts were not stable, the blood feud would not be resolved. Even the festive atmosphere of the Spring Festival had been washed away. Placed in front of Tian Wenjing was a gargantuan problem. The cold-faced governor was calm and unhurried. The first thing he did after taking office was to use the special funds Ouyang Shua had allocated to pay a generous pension to the families of the deceased. In addition, Tian Wenjing ordered all the officials of the various prefectures and counties to move out with sincerity and Spring Festival gifts to express their apologies and condolences to the families of the deceased. The Spring Festival gifts were not fake. They were all practical items such as rice, flour, oil, and cloth. This was in line with Tian Wenjing's practical style. With this series of actions, he finally managed to quell the resentment of the people. After the Spring Festival, during the Qingming Festival, Tian Wenjing prepared to hold large-scale memorial ceremonies in the various prefectures and counties in order to further dispel the resentment of the people and win over the hearts of the people. The dead were the most important, and nothing could be done. Tian Wenjing was keenly aware that if the hearts of the people did not return, it would be difficult to carry out any government orders. The Spring Festival holiday had just passed, and Tian Wenjing was busy again. He went to various prefectures and counties to investigate the local customs. He encouraged the farmers to open up terrace fields outside the city and promoted the welfare policy of mulberry planting and silkworm rearing. Tian Wenjing also encouraged the herbalists to take advantage of the superior forest environment of Mengding County to introduce the planting techniques of medicinal herbs, vigorously develop the medicinal herb industry, and embark on the road to riches. Every time he went to a place, Tian Wenjing was able to put forward reasonable suggestions to get rich according to the local conditions. This time, it completely revealed the solid foundation of the cold-faced county chief. Historically, Tian Wenjing was a very practical official. He was very familiar with the lives of the commoners and was proficient in various industries. It was naturally easy for him to guide them. Previously, there was compensation and condolences to ease the trauma of losing their loved ones. Now they saw the hope of getting rich. The commoners of Mengding County gradually changed their minds and gradually acknowledged the governor. As such, Tian Wenjing initially stabilized the situation of Mengding County that was on the verge of collapse. It was considered a great achievement. Ouyang Shua even specially issued an imperial edict to reward this meritorious official. The title of a model governor was not just for show. Tian Wenjing's methods seemed ordinary, but they required a solid foundation. It was truly an impressive way of governing. Compared to Tian Wenjing, the governor of Tingyue County, Zhou Haichun, who also served in the south, was much more relaxed. Firstly, Tingyue County had surrendered in the later stages and was not damaged by the war. The overall order in the county was still considered stable. Secondly, with Zhang Liao's army holding the fort, the small fry would not be able to cause much trouble. The only thing that Zhou Haichun needed to worry about was the settlement of the mountain barbarians. When Ouyang Shua contacted the mountain barbarians in the mountains of Yunnan and asked them to go down the mountain to assist Shanghai City in the battle, he had made a promise. Now that the war was over, Tinghua County naturally had to fulfill the promise. Zhou Haichun would follow the model of Wuzhou County and bring the mountain barbarian tribes living deep in the mountains to live at the foot of the mountain. He would build hundreds of mountain barbarian autonomous towns. This was a considerable expenditure. In addition, he had to organize people to train the mountain barbarians in skills and help them quickly change from a hunting civilization to a farming civilization. The mountain barbarians had seen the rich life of the mountain barbarians in Wuzhou County. They would not be as hesitant as the mountain barbarians in Lianzhou Basin at the beginning. They could not wait to go down the mountain as soon as possible. Although the various matters were not difficult, they were complicated. For Zhou Haichun, the new governor, it could be considered a good experience. Chapter 806, February 6th, January 8th, Shanghai City. For the people in the city, the New Year would only be celebrated after the Lantern Festival. Therefore, even though the government was already at work, the city was still brimming with a festive atmosphere and was extremely lively. Other than Bai Qi and the other army commanders, there were also some generals who returned to Shanghai City during the Spring Festival to visit their families. For example, Southern Border Navy Commander Zhou Yu. After the end of the Battle of Qi Bai, the famous beauty of the Three Kingdoms, Little Qiao, accompanied Zhou Yu and appeared in Shanghai City. They settled down in a house and were in love with each other. Unfortunately, Zhou Yu only stayed in Shanghai City for 2 months before he rushed to the North Sea Bay Fleet to take up his post. Although the two places were only separated by a valley, there was still a difference between the two armies. Zhou Yu had just been appointed and had yet to make any contributions. No matter how much he missed his lovely wife, he could not return to Shanghai City on his own. This wait lasted until the Spring Festival holiday. Zhou Yu had already returned to North Sea City on the 5th day of the first lunar month. Who would have thought that on the 7th day of the first month, the General Administration of Military Affairs would pass on the reorganization plan of the Army to the commanders of the Army? The North Sea Bay Fleet was renamed as the Southern Border Fleet, and they would choose a day to defend Oceanwood City. According to the plan, the Southern Border Fleet would not be able to return to Shanghai City for a very long time. Upon seeing this, Zhou Yu returned to Shanghai City on the same day. Firstly, he wanted to take the opportunity to see the Navy Governor Zheng, he who had not yet left, and let him know beforehand. Secondly, he wanted to take the opportunity to bid farewell to his lovely wife. In history, Zhou Yu was known as the handsome Zhoulang. He was a romantic and elegant man, so it was only natural that he doted on his beautiful wife. Seeing that they were going to be separated for a long time, Xiao Qiao immediately cried until her eyes turned red. Right at this moment, a soldier came to report, "His Majesty summons you." Xiao Qiao was startled. Her eyes shone with hope as she said, "Husband, could it be that Jun Shang has other plans for you?" She was overwhelmed by the feelings of parting and was no longer the usual shrewd Xiao Qiao. Zhou Yu naturally understood his lovely wife. He clapped his hands and smiled warmly. "Madam, I'll be back soon." When he arrived at the Protectorate Manor, he saw Su Chu standing guard outside, his face expressionless and his eyes wide open. The two of them used to be enemies, but now they were both officials of the same palace. It was really hard to predict. Zhou Yu did not dare to slight Su Chu. Not to mention the fact that Su Chu was a hero of the Three Kingdoms. Even as an opponent, Zhou Yu admired his bravery. Even with Su Chu's current status as the captain of the guards and the divine marshal general, no one dared to disrespect him. Zhou Yu smiled and cupped his fists. "General Su Chu, is his lordship here? I have come under orders to see you. Please inform them." Su Chu grinned and retreated to the side, saying, "General, please come in. His Majesty is waiting in the study." Zhou Yu once again cupped his fists and stepped in. His movements were elegant, and he was truly a scholarly general with an elegant demeanor. A rough man like Su Chu naturally felt uncomfortable when he saw this. He wanted to laugh, but his laughter was uglier than crying. Entering the study, Zhou Yu saw that Jun Shang was bent over the table reading memorials. Not daring to disturb him, he quietly stood in a corner. Raising his eyes to look, he saw that there was a small table placed below Jun Shang's table. A young girl dressed in green was arranging the memorials to the throne. Seeing her elegant appearance, Zhou Yu could not help but sigh in admiration. Thinking that this was Jun Shang's study, this girl must be someone close to Jun Shang. Zhou Yu immediately withdrew his gaze, not daring to profane her, and quietly stood there with rapt attention. Ouyang Shuo had long sensed Zhou Yu's arrival, but he was in the middle of reading a memorial. He wanted to finish it in one go, so he did not open his mouth to greet him. With a few brushes, he finished reading. Having entered the game for 3 years, he had read countless memorials. Not to mention anything else, Ouyang Shuo felt that his calligraphy was getting better and better, and there was a trace of a unique charm to it. He had really put in a lot of effort. Ouyang Shuo raised his head and said with a smile, "Gongjin is here. Come, have a seat." Zhou Yu cupped his fists and solemnly saluted. "This general has been summoned to greet his majesty." Saying this, he sat down on the chair that Su Chu had brought over, but he did not dare to sit completely, only putting up half of it to show his respect to Jun Shang. At this time, Cyan Close also came back to her senses and curiously looked at Zhou Yu. In the eyes of the players, this beautiful Zhou Lang was also a super idol, a complete mystery to tens of thousands of people. Ouyang Shuo did not go straight to the point, but took the opportunity to chat with Zhou Yu about the Southern Frontier Fleet, telling him some of his expectations and plans for the Southern Frontier Fleet. Since receiving the Army Reorganization Plan, Zhou Yu had begun to ponder how to realize the strategic intentions of the Conference of Commanders and realize the new position of the Southern Frontier Fleet. As the two chatted, the more they talked, the more congenial they became, and many of their ideas coincided with each other. Zhou Yu is indeed Zhou Yu. He had an extremely unique understanding of the construction of the Navy, especially the inland Navy. Some of his ideas made Ouyang Shuo, a pioneer, involuntarily slap the table in praise. Good, good. Ouyang Shuo's smile deepened, his mood rather carefree. He said with a smile, "With you, Gongjin, commanding the Southern Frontier Fleet, I can rest assured." Zhou Yu cupped his fists, but did not exchange pleasantries. Ouyang Shuo's tone changed, and he finally returned to the original purpose of summoning Zhou Yu. He asked, "I ask you, after coming to the wilderness, do you still have letters with Pang Tong?" Zhou Yu was startled, somewhat unsure of what Jun Shang meant. He could only answer truthfully, "Indeed, we occasionally communicate." After saying this, Zhou Yu felt somewhat anxious and fearful. Pang Tong was now an important minister of the Shu Han dynasty. His status was almost equal to Zhuge Liang, the prime minister. Shanghai City and the Shu Han dynasty were mortal enemies. Could it be that Jun Shang was suspicious of him? This crime of colluding with the enemy was a serious crime. Thinking back to the contents of the letters, Zhou Yu felt slightly at ease. There was nothing wrong with the contents of the letters. Now it all depended on the breadth of mind of this Jun Shang in front of him. If it was a narrow-minded person, even if there was no evidence of collusion, there would still be a rift in his heart. Thus, he would alienate him and not put him in an important position. Thinking of what Madame had said before she left, Zhou Yu actually felt a trace of bitterness in his heart. It wouldn't be a prophecy, would it? From start to finish, in less than a minute, Zhou Yu's heart had already turned 100 and 1,000 times. Zhou Yu was thinking too much. No matter how paranoid Ouyang Shuo was, he would not think that Zhou Yu would seek refuge with the Shu Han dynasty. Between the two, they were mortal enemies. It was just that not everyone could maintain a calm heart when things came to a head. This was especially so for a newcomer like Zhou Yu, who had not made any contributions and had not truly integrated into Shanghai City. There was also a gap between him and Ouyang Shuo, the ruler. This was not surprising. Ouyang Shuo was busy with government affairs. After the Battle of Red Cliffs, he had been busy conquering the two major provinces of Lingnan and Yunnan. He had not had the chance to communicate with Zhou Yu and the other generals of the three countries. This was especially so for the generals of the Dong Yuwu Navy. The process of subduing them was not glorious, and there was probably still a trace of resentment in their hearts. The relationship between the ruler and his subjects was still rather distant. Zhou Yu could not understand Ouyang Shua's character, but he could understand. Ouyang Shua smiled and said, "There is no need to worry. What I mean is it possible to invite Mr. Pang Tong to Shanghai City to become an official? If Mr. Pang Tong is willing to come, I will definitely give him a high position. If the players wanted to defeat the royal city, they could not do it in one go. Instead, they had to do it slowly. Dali Royal City did not have a dynasty yet, so Ouyang Shua had no way to start. He could only set his sights on the Shu Han dynasty. And the first step was to dig out the Shu Han dynasty's foundation. The retreat of the 5 horses of Western Liang from Chengdu was the first example. Now, Ouyang Shua had set his sights on Pang Tong. Pang Tong's courtesy name was Shi Wan, and his nickname was Young Phoenix. He was as famous as the Crouching Dragon, Zhuge Liang, and was highly regarded and trusted by Liu Bei. He was one of the 2 most important military advisors under Liu Bei. If he could dig out Pang Tong, he would be able to cut off one of Liu Bei's arms. In history, Pang Tong was the main reason why Liu Bei was able to seize Yi province. Unfortunately, the heavens were jealous of his talent. When Liu Bei besieged Luo County, Pang Tong led his troops to attack the city. Unfortunately, he was hit by a stray arrow and died at the age of 36. He was conferred the title of Marquis Jing. Later on, the place where Pang Tong was buried was named Luofeng Hill. In the Romance of the 3 Kingdoms, it was said that Pang Tong was ambushed at Luofeng Hill and was fated to be buried there. However, it was intentionally belittling Pang Tong to further highlight Zhuge Liang's status and talent. Of course, Ouyang Shua's request for Zhou Yu to instigate Pang Tong was not without reason. Firstly, according to the Shanghai guards, Pang Tong did not have a good time in the Shu Han dynasty. Although Pang Tong was deeply trusted by Liu Bei, he was always suppressed by Zhuge Liang. He had talent, but was unable to put to good use. It was not that Pang Tong was not as talented as Zhuge Liang. It was just that more than 80% of the old officials of Shu Han respected Zhuge Liang. They could only blame Pang Tong for dying too early and Zhuge Liang for living too long. Of the important officials of Shu Han who appeared in the wilderness, less than half were personally trained by Zhuge Liang after Liu Bei's death. Some of the officials only had eyes for the prime minister and not the emperor. Not to mention Pang Tong, even Liu Bei, the emperor of Shu Han, felt a little uncomfortable at times. When Zhuge Liang assisted the late ruler Liu Chan, he was used to being the sole ruler. It was inevitable that he was a little arrogant and did not care about Liu Bei's face. The relationship between the emperor and his officials was actually quite delicate. It was said that Liu Bei had once wanted to use Pang Tong to restrain Zhuge Liang and balance his power. Unfortunately, he had little success. This was one of the reasons. More importantly, Zhou Yu and Pang Tong were old friends and they had a good relationship. In real history, after the Battle of Red Cliffs, Sun Quan made Zhou Yu a deputy general and the governor of Southern County. As for Pang Tong, he was conferred the title of Meritorious Officer of Southern County. What was a meritorious officer? According to the Han system, the meritorious officer of a county, other than human affairs, could often be involved in the county's affairs. In other words, Pang Tong, the meritorious officer, was actually the most important administrative assistant of Zhou Yu, the governor. His status was extraordinary. The 2 of them were directly superior and subordinate. Pang Tong served Zhou Yu for close to 2 years until Zhou Yu's death. There was no historical evidence that the 2 of them were not on good terms. Pang Tong also did not turn to anyone before Zhou Yu's death. The biography of Pang Tong in the 3 Kingdoms even recorded that after Zhou Yu's death, Pang Tong sent his funeral to Wu. The people of Wu had heard of his name. In ancient times, sending someone's funeral was a grand ceremony. For Pang Tong to send someone a funeral, it was even more significant. Only those who respected or were extremely close to the deceased had the right to do it. In other words, only those who were extremely close to the deceased could do it even if they wanted to. Zhou Yu had previously mentioned that the 2 of them were still exchanging letters in the wilderness. This undoubtedly proved this point. Chapter 807. Since Pang Tong had a close relationship with Zhou Yu, how did Pang Tong end up joining Liu Bei after Zhou Yu's death? Liu Bei occupied Jingzhou and became the magistrate of Jingzhou. Pang Tong became the magistrate of Luoyang County. Unfortunately, Pang Tong was once removed from office because he did not pay attention to county affairs. At that moment, Lu Su of Eastern Wu wrote a letter to Liu Bei, telling him that Pang Tong was not a talented person. The so-called talent of 100 li referred to those who were only qualified to govern 100 li. Lu Su's meaning was very clear. It was a waste of talent to let Pang Tong be the county magistrate. He was a great talent that needed to be put to good use. During this period of time, Zhuge Liang also mentioned Pang Tong to Liu Bei. Thereupon, Liu Bei summoned Pang Tong. After a round of discussion, Liu Bei regarded Pang Tong highly and appointed him as the administrator of central affairs. Historically, it had always been a mystery whether Zhou Yu and Lu Su had recommended Pang Tong to Sun Quan. Perhaps he did, but Sun Quan rejected him. Perhaps the Jiangdong group at that time did not lack talents like Pang Tong. As for the romance of the heavens, Shi Su also recommended Tong, but because Tong's appearance was ugly and inferior to Sun Quan, he was not recommended. This should be a fabrication. The truth had already become a mystery. No matter what, with the relationship between Zhou Yu and Pang Tong, coupled with Pang Tong's lack of success in Shuhan, Ouyang Shuo had a reason to sow discord and poach a talent like Pang Tong. At the very least, he wanted Liu Bei to suspect Pang Tong and not put him in an important position. Of course, this was a last resort, and Ouyang Shuo wouldn't use it unless he had no other choice. When Zhou Yu heard this, he realized that the Lord was referring to this matter. His heart, which had been hanging in the air, finally relaxed. He smiled and said, "Since the Lord has entrusted this task to me, I will do my best to fulfill it." Ouyang Shuo nodded and said, "Gongjin, you don't need to be impatient. You need to plan slowly." "I understand." Zhou Yu nodded. From Pang Tong's letter, Zhou Yu could vaguely sense Pang Tong's distress, which was why he appeared so confident. Ouyang Shuo smiled and said, "General is about to go on a long journey. I won't keep you for long." Zhou Yu, on the other hand, was startled. He had long heard that Jun Shang had a mysterious intelligence agency that was in charge of monitoring the officials. He didn't expect that his conversation with his wife wouldn't escape the eyes of this organization. Fortunately, he didn't have any ulterior motives when interacting with Pang Tong. Otherwise, he would have been beheaded by now. Zhou Yu's expression was calm and unruffled. He stood up, saluted, and took his leave. The seed had been planted, but whether it would blossom and bear fruit was still a matter of time. After sending Zhou Yu off, Ouyang Shuo still had to meet one more person, and that was Lei Fan. A few days ago, the assessment team, led by Zhang Tingyu, had returned to Shanghai City and submitted a detailed assessment report. In the end, not only did Xiao He feel ashamed, but even Ouyang Shuo was shocked. According to Zhang Tingyu's evaluation, Lei Fan and his Duanren Manor were not simple. First, Duanren Manor. Other than the favored gods manor, Duanren Manor was the last to be established in Jili County. However, Duanren Manor's revenue was the highest in the county, second only to Mulan Manor. Especially after the Qiushui River was widened, the number of merchant ships entering Shanghai City through the Pearl River system increased. Duanren Manor seized the opportunity to build a pier on the East Law Lake for the merchant ships to stop at, becoming a node on the trade route. Coupled with the preferential policies introduced by Duanren Manor, some merchant ships even gave up on entering Shanghai City and directly started doing business at Duanren Manor, greatly promoting the development of Duanren Manor's trade. Mulan Manor's tariff advantage was weakening, and Duanren Manor was overtaking it. Apart from that, Duanren Manor's aquaculture, medicine, and silkworm industries were all flourishing. With the help of the gold mine, the economy was strong. The difficult part was that Duanren Manor's governance was clean and honest. Although Lei Fan was born in the Mountain Barbarians, he was not a boorish person and adapted well to the rules of officialdom. What was more difficult was that he retained the tenacity and boldness unique to the mountain barbarians, which allowed Lei Fan to overcome all obstacles. This kind of boldness and action was very rare to see in an official who had graduated from a specialized class. This also formed Lei Fan's unique charisma. For example, building a pier on the East Law Lake was clearly a way to steal Shanghai City's business. Lei Fan also did what Tianfeng Manor did not dare to do, which was also convenient for them. Facts proved that this method not only did not harm Shanghai City's core interests, but also successfully created a secondary market outside of the primary market, diverting the non-core functions of Shanghai City, achieving a win-win situation. Seeing this, Tianfeng Manor followed suit at West Law Lake, but they were already a step too late. Similar incidents were too numerous to mention. Not only that, Lei Fan did not have any racial prejudice. He would not be biased towards the mountain barbarians just because he was born in the mountain barbarians, and he handled matters fairly. When the territory code was implemented, Lei Fan did not hesitate to punish the mountain barbarians for their crimes. Even at that time, Lei Fan did not bring out the mountain barbarian tribe's rules to replace the territory code to punish his clansmen. It was clear that he had a deep understanding of the territory code. Because he handled matters fairly, Lei Fan was deeply loved and respected by the Han people and mountain barbarians. A mountain barbarian was supported by the Han people. Just this alone was a very impressive achievement. Even Zhang Tingyu admitted it. The prejudice against the mountain barbarians can end now, starting from Lei Fan. Ouyang Shua's policy of racial integration seemed to have blossomed and borne fruit. Xiao He also admitted his mistake and was willing to forfeit his salary for half a year. In this way, the last obstacle to Lei Fan's promotion was removed. Just yesterday, the Protectorate of the Southern Border officially announced Lei Fan's appointment. Lei Fan would be promoted to Ezhou County Chief immediately. Once the news came out, it caused a huge wave in the territory. Along with the appointment certificate was the evaluation report of Lei Fan from the Office of Personnel. It was said that Xiao He had resisted the pressure and requested to be announced. In this way, the mountain barbarians could be considered to have cleared the name of the mountain barbarians. Whether it was the mountain barbarians of Zhili County, the mountain barbarians of Wuzhou County, or even the mountain barbarians of Tingyue County, this appointment certificate had an extraordinary meaning. It symbolized that the mountain barbarians were completing their transformation, saying goodbye to boorishness and ignorance. Before taking office, Lei Fan specially made a trip to Shanghai City. Lei Fan was not stupid. By now, he had already heard about the twists and turns of this appointment. Lei Fan is naturally grateful to Jun Shang for supporting him. Before officially taking office, Lei Fan also wanted to listen to the Lord's advice. When Ouyang Shua saw Lei Fan, the first thing he said was, "Lord Zhao's decision to postpone your appointment is due to official business, not personal feelings. You have to understand this." Understand. Lei Fan's expression was complicated. How could he not know the prejudice the outside world had against the mountain barbarians? After seeing the vastness of the world, he realized his own ignorance and inexperience. For the mountain barbarians who were slowly integrating into the agricultural system, there was no doubt that they cherished the opportunity before them. The mountain barbarian warriors were willing to accept the most rigorous training, and the mountain barbarians diligently learned all kinds of skills every day. As for officials like Lei Fan, they were treading on thin ice. Every member of the mountain barbarian tribe was working hard for this transformation, doing their best in their respective fields. Everything was just a change. To no longer be discriminated against, to no longer be inferior. This was not a matter for one person, but for the entire tribe to forge ahead. Fortunately, hard work paid off, and they finally saw the dawn of the mountain barbarian tribe's rise. Lei Fan's ascension was a clear signal. The greatest contributor was none other than the Lord in front of Lei Fan. It was the Lord who took the initiative to make contact with the mountain barbarian tribe and led the Blackbird tribe down the mountain, thus opening the path to glory for the mountain barbarian tribe. It was the Lord who formulated the mountain barbarian policy placing the mountain barbarian warriors in important positions and relying on them as the most reliable guards. When Ouyang Shuo decided to station the monolith army in King City, it was not that no one objected. Ouyang Shuo, on the other hand, was arbitrary. No one knew better than Ouyang Shuo that the mountain barbarian tribe's loyalty to him stemmed from their bloodline. If there was a troop that was least likely to betray him, it would definitely be the monolith army. Because Ouyang Shuo was their supreme king, and the noblest blood of the ancient mountain barbarians flowed in his body. As such, what reason did Ouyang Shuo have not to station the monolith army in King City? Ouyang Shuo said, "The high mountain tribe of Izhou County is also a valiant and respectable tribe. After you take up your post, you must make more contact with them and dispel their apprehensions." The high mountain tribe mainly lived in the central mountains of Izhou County, the eastern Zhonggu Plains, and Orchid Island. In the game, the high mountain tribe, like the Li tribe and the mountain barbarians, mainly relied on fishing and hunting and had yet to enter an agricultural civilization. Every mountain in Izhou County had a specific master, and it was their hunting ground. It was sacred and inviolable. The high mountain tribe were very ferocious, and because of hunting territories, different tribes would often have disputes, and killings would occur from time to time. They even had the custom of headhunting and hunting the enemy's head as a sign of their coming of age ceremony. The high mountain tribe was respectable because they were fearless and unafraid of sacrificing themselves when fighting against foreign invaders. Even though they knew that it was like throwing an egg against a rock, they still displayed the high mountain tribe's heroic spirit, abandoning their bodies to retain their fighting spirit. The Sedek tribe in the epic movie Sedek Balai was a branch of the high mountain tribe. The movie was about the famous Fog Society uprising, in which the high mountain tribe's heroic figure, Mona Rodeo, led less than 1,000 tribesmen to fight against the Japanese invaders. The total population of the Sedek tribe in Fog Society was less than 2,100, and in this uprising, more than 900 people died in battle or committed suicide. In order not to be a burden to the men and to save rations, the women of the tribe generously went to their deaths, hanging themselves. The 3,000 Japanese soldiers even used poison gas bombs, but more than half of them were still killed or injured. Therefore, although the uprising failed, the Sedek people held on to the spirit of the tribe. The film made people's blood boil as it vividly showed and presented the wild battle between men. Real men. Faced with such a tribe, Ouyang Shuo hoped that it could be like the mountain barbarians and the Li tribe, gradually integrating into the system of Shanghai City and becoming a part of the big family. One day in the future, Shanghai City might be able to go to Izhou County to recruit the strongest high mountain tribe warriors, gallop on the battlefield, and show the heroic spirit of hot-blooded men. Just thinking about it was enough to make one's heart flutter. Mobile users, please browse and read for a better reading experience. Chapter 808. Lei Fan's experience in managing Duan'er Manor made him a suitable candidate to govern Izhou County. There were many similarities between the mountain barbarian tribe and the high mountain tribe. Lei Fan's appearance would also gain the high mountain tribe's approval. The high mountain race was an exceptionally staunch race, and using force would not do. Ouyang Shuo wasn't in a hurry and was extremely patient. The two of them chatted until noon before Lei Fan took his leave. Lei Fan would be teleported to Shanghai City and then escorted by warships to Izhou County to take up his post. Along with Lei Fan were 50 capable officials selected by the General Administration of Administration. On the 8th day of the second month, the 10th day of the first month in the back garden of the Southern Border Protectorate. On this day, Ouyang Shuo was accompanying Binger to play with the lucky beast, Qiaiqi, in the back garden. Binger was feeding Qi the fresh bamboo that she had found with great difficulty. Qi-1 was still as dumb as ever. He didn't have the intuition of a lucky beast at all. A pair of short legs tried to hook onto Binger's calves, but no matter how hard he tried, he couldn't. He could only curl up into a ball and hug a bamboo stick, crunching happily. As he ate, he did not forget to squeeze under Binger's feet, causing Binger to laugh incessantly. On the first day of the first month, Chi's auspicious sign of sweeping golden dragon really surprised Ouyang Shua. He thought that he would have to wait for the little fellow to grow up before he could trigger the auspicious sign. It seemed like whether or not the auspicious sign would be triggered depended entirely on the little fellow's mood. Ouyang Shua planned to send Chi-E to the Spirit Beast Pavilion in Cliff Mountain City to cultivate after the Lantern Festival. Although the little guy was a lucky beast, it was also a quasi-divine beast. Perhaps after cultivating for a while, he might even learn some new skills. As Bing fed the bamboo, she did not stop talking. She asked, "Big brother, are you going to be the emperor?" "Yes." Ouyang Shua didn't hide anything and said with a smile, "You are also going to be a princess." But Bing is not happy. The little girl frowned, which was rare for her. She put down the bamboo in her hand and scattered it on the ground. When Chi saw this, he finally let go of Bing's leg. Like a rabbit, he jumped up and down, picking up the scattered bamboo and hugging it in his arms like a treasure. At the last moment, Chi-E wanted to run back to his young master with the bamboo. Unfortunately, her legs were short, and her arms were not long either. How could her small body carry so many bamboos? As he jogged, the bamboo kept falling. By the time he returned to Bing's side, the only thing left in his arms was the bamboo he was chewing on. Chi-1 scratched his head with his short hand. His eyes, which had dark circles around them, were filled with confusion. Where did the bamboo go? When he turned around, he saw the bamboo that had fallen to the ground. Chi-1 was really patient. He ran out again and began to collect bamboo. From the looks of it, the little guy was treating this as a fun game. It's really square. Fortunately, no one noticed that Ouyang Shua was caught unprepared by Bing's reaction. "Unhappy? Can you tell me why?" Ouyang Shua asked. Bing said matter-of-factly, "Big brother, think about it. The emperors on TV are all so fierce. Even princes and princesses had to bow to him, not daring to smile. Brother, now that you've become the emperor, will you become very fierce?" Ouyang Shua was startled. He rubbed Bing's hair and said with a smile, "Even if I become the emperor, I will still be your brother. He's still the same person. How could he change? You messed up my hair." Bing was very concerned about her image now. She dressed herself beautifully every day. However, she was not satisfied with her brother's answer. She pouted and said, "Big brother, you're brushing me off." The little girl was not easy to fool now. She was very quick-witted. Ouyang Shua smiled and avoided answering. However, he sighed in his heart, "Because I also don't know if I will change." The emperors of the past would solemnly swear before they sat on the throne. However, if they really sat on it, they would not be able to control themselves. Their hearts would unconsciously become cold, and they would become a stranger. An emperor who did not have a heart of steel would not be able to sit on the throne. But whoever sat on the throne, whether it was a gentle and honest prince, or a prince who had tasted the sufferings of the world, or a prince who was full of sunshine, they would all end up in the same place. Binger seemed to feel something. She raised her head and looked at her brother. Her eyes were clear and bright. The little girl suddenly grinned. Her delicate little hand held Ouyang Shua's slightly rough big hand. It was the result of holding a sword for a long time. She said word by word, "Big brother, don't be afraid. Binger will accompany you." It was unknown when Bing's spotless heart sutra had reached a higher level. The little girl's heart became purer and purer. There was an indescribable charm in her coldness. She could understand people's hearts. Ouyang Shua was startled. Then he laughed loudly. It was the kind of happy laughter that came from the bottom of his heart. It was like some kind of indescribable pressure had suddenly been vented. It was like walking alone in the dark and suddenly finding someone walking beside him with a lantern. It made him feel very warm. "I'm not afraid," Ouyang Shua said softly. It seemed like he was answering Bing, but it also seemed like he was talking to himself. "If there really is a cold abyss in front of me, I won't regret it." Ouyang Shua was different from the emperors of the past. He practiced inner canon of the yellow thearch. He was going to practice even more powerful techniques. His ultimate goal was to understand his own body and see his true nature. Ouyang Shuo believed that he would be able to transcend in the end. He would be able to step on the demon of power. Ow! At this moment, Qi ran over with a few bamboos in his arms. As he ran, the bamboos kept falling. The little guy seemed to be enjoying the process. The siblings looked at each other and smiled when they saw him. Our little girl has really grown up. Ouyang Shuo was both gratified and a little disappointed. At this moment, Su Chu came to report. Lord Feng Qiuhuang has come to visit. He is waiting in the study. Ouyang Shuo's eyes flashed with surprise. It was not normal for Feng Wu to come to Shanghai City at this time. Following the annexation of Lingxi City, the dragon-seeking acupuncture point became hostile. In addition, the various guilds were making their final preparations for the competition for the satellite cities after the Lantern Festival. Therefore, in the 4th year of Gaia, Ouyang Shuo, the leader of the Shanghai Alliance, did not organize a routine alliance meeting. If there was something to discuss between members, they could drop by. For Feng Wu to come to Shanghai City before the Spring Festival, there must be something important. Ouyang Shuo nodded and said, I understand. Su Chu immediately took his leave. I'll be leaving first. Accompany Qi well. Ouyang Shuo said. Binger had already begun picking up the bamboos on the ground. She played with Qi and said, Brother, go do what you need to do. Ouyang Shuo nodded and left the back garden. In the study, Feng Qiuhuang picked up the teacup and took a sip. It tasted bitter. Ouyang Shuo's stance on the concubine marriage at the imperial court meeting had already spread throughout the wilderness. Feng Qiuhuang had completely extinguished that thought. She buried it deep in her heart and no longer thought about it. As Fallen Phoenix City took over the entire Grand Peak province, Feng Qiuhuang realized that her perspective on problems had changed. She became similar to Ouyang Shuo. Perhaps every feudal vassal was a loner without a family. When she took over Phoenix Soaring City and faced the Feng family again, Feng Qiuhuang was already calm. She no longer had any excess emotions in her heart. Most of the time, hatred was a manifestation of the weak. A true expert did not have hatred. That was because those that made her feel hatred had long been annihilated, no longer remaining in the world. If I can't let it go, then let it disappear completely. Accepting the Feng family, letting the Feng family's talents be used by her, and worshipping her was a decision that Feng Qiuhuang made recently. Of course, Feng Qiuhuang did not show mercy to those who betrayed her in the past. Some people were completely expelled from the family and driven out of the Grand Peak province. What awaited them was only endless loneliness and regret. This was the fate of betrayers. No one would sympathize with them. Most of the time, the wilderness was crueler than reality, because there were no universal laws in the wilderness. It followed the complete law of the jungle, survival of the fittest. Just like the Hope planet that humans were about to move to, it was a bloody war between the conqueror and the conquered. There was no warmth or mercy. Those who were not of my clan must have a different heart. Time has changed. The elders of the Feng family were also filled with emotions. In the blink of an eye, the color of the family had changed. The only thing that made them feel gratified was that Feng Qiuhuang still had the blood of the Feng family flowing in her body. This couldn't be erased. Perhaps it's time to change the family's tradition. The previous Feng family's patriarch said, on the first day of the first month, Feng Qiuhuang, a female member of the family, took over the family's scepter and took over the position of patriarch. This broke the tradition of the Feng family that had existed for thousands of years. On that day, all the female members of the Feng family had tears streaming down their faces. What about Feng Qiuhuang? She just calmly took over the scepter and, under the guidance of the great elder, read the unchanging declaration of the successor. No one knew if this Phoenix Queen's heart was in turmoil. Feng Qiuhuang was actually not far from the real throne. Sometimes, Feng Qiuhuang would suddenly envy Bai Hua, who was originally her biggest competitor. Following the annexation of Lingxi City, the two of them had already walked on two completely different paths and could no longer compete with each other. Bai Hua was relieved of the heavy burden on his shoulders and could be at ease as a high official under Ouyang Shuo's command. With the protection of a giant like Ouyang Shuo, he no longer needed to grind his way forward. But what about Feng Xiaohuang? She seemed to have obtained supreme power, but she had walked on a path of no return, cold and dark. And this was the path that Ouyang Shuo had been walking on. That was the path of a king, the path of an emperor. On this path, Feng Xiaohuang could no longer see a single friend. Thus, at this time, Feng Xiaohuang especially wanted to see Ouyang Shuo, the extraordinary man who had left an indelible mark in her life. Only in front of Ouyang Shuo could Feng Xiaohuang open her mouth, hoping to find a trace of comfort. Deep in her heart, it was no longer so cold. In addition, Feng Xiaohuang also wanted to remind Ouyang Shuo that a crisis was approaching Shanghai City. If Ouyang Shuo didn't deal with it properly, Shanghai City might be in danger of being destroyed. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience. Chapter 809. Ouyang Shuo had just stepped into the study when he sensed the chilly aura emitted from Feng Xiaohuang. Feng Xiaohuang had changed. She had become like him. A light flickered in Ouyang Shuo's eyes as he greeted Feng Xiaohuang with a smile. He sat on his seat and adjusted himself into a comfortable position. The spring festival isn't over yet, and you're already busy? Casting a glance at Ouyang Shuo, Feng Xiaohuang helplessly said, "You still have the mood to laugh. What's wrong?" Ouyang Shuo was puzzled. Feng Xiaohuang said, "I heard from the elders of the clan that Di Chun and the others are making a move again." Feng Xiaohuang's tone did not change at all when she mentioned the clan elders. It was as if she was talking about an ordinary official. When he saw this, Ouyang Shuo was even more certain that Feng Xiaohuang had really taken the path of the king. Truly amazing, not only in China, but also in the world. Ouyang Shuo waved his hand and said, "Let them be. In any case, they won't be able to cause any big waves." Towards the Yin-Huang alliance, Ouyang Shuo had always liked to remain silent and would never cause trouble for them. However, if Di Chun and the others wanted to set up a trap for the Shanghai City, Ouyang Shuo would arrive first and deal a fatal blow. This was the case in the Battle of Yunnan. Ouyang Shuo was not in the mood to play cat and mouse with Di Chun and the others. Today you set me up, tomorrow I'll set you up, back and forth. What was the point? Rebuilding Shanghai City was the way of the king. Scheming and scheming were ultimately just a small path. For example, if Ouyang Shuo wanted to deal with the Shuhan dynasty, they would have to fight on the battlefield in the end. This attempt to drive a wedge between Pang Tong and himself was merely an aid, an act of convenience. Di Chun and the others played these tricks all day, and they didn't feel tired at all. It's different this time. You have to be careful. Feng Xiaohuang's expression was solemn. Ouyang Shuo was stunned, and when he saw Feng Xiaohuang's expression didn't seem to be fake, he stood up and asked, "Tell me, what tricks are they playing this time? Assassination, sowing discord, or joining forces?" "Neither." What Feng Xiaohuang said next caused Ouyang Shuo to frown. In the end, Ouyang Shuo was just a commoner and didn't know how big the world was. He had also underestimated the power of aristocratic families. Many things in the world were hidden above the clouds and were not something he could touch. Just like the quantum world, what you see is not the whole world. The story had to start from the era of Earth. Before the establishment of the Earth Federation, there was not much interaction between the world's aristocratic families. Especially between the East and the West, there was a natural barrier. With the establishment of the Earth Federation and the integration of the world, these aristocratic families slowly came together in order to resist the federal government on the surface. They secretly set up an organization called the Silver Hand, and the families of Di Chun and the others were members of it. The Di family was a core member of the Silver Hand. The tentacles of the Silver Hand had reached almost every corner of the Federation. Only a few people knew of their existence, including the academics led by the Federation president. The main members of the academic faction were all Federation officials who had graduated from professional schools. Furthermore, they were mainly from the grassroots and had some innate conflict with the aristocratic families. It was their duty to eliminate the privileges of the aristocratic families. It was precisely because of the existence of the academics that the Silver Hand could not be unbridled in the Federation. The struggle between the two had accompanied the growth of the entire Federation. The arrival of the Doomsday made the Silver Hand face a huge test. The soil and foundation that they relied on for survival suddenly faced a devastating impact. The academics seized the opportunity to counterattack and realize a desperate counterattack. The calculation of the first achievement value and the second calculation of the game achievement value were the ideas of the academics to completely smash the sharp weapon of the Silver Hand, so that they would lose their privileges and be unable to tyrannize on Planet Hope. Of course, the Silver Hand did not give in easily. What followed was naturally a game of chess. The treatment of the special game cabin, as well as the confidentiality of the Earth, the qualification for internal testing, the game insider information, and so on, were all fought for by the Silver Hand. In the face of this behemoth, even the Federation president had to compromise sometimes. In addition to the above, the Silver Hand did not give up the ambition to dominate the Earth. In their minds, as long as they could maintain a transcendent position in the game. According to the second calculation of the game's achievement value, they could still win. The only thing that the Silver Hand did not expect was that Gaia was on the side of the academics. The perfect mechanism of the Earth left them with basically no loopholes to exploit. The fair game environment made the Silver Hand feel restrained. As a result, it was inevitable that there would be grassroots players who used the Earth to complete a counterattack and become the backbone of the fight against the Silver Hand on Planet Hope. For this reason, before the interstellar migration, there was an agreement within the Silver Hand. Once there was an uncontrollable anomaly that was enough to threaten the survival of the Silver Hand, the other members were obliged to cooperate with the members of that country to eradicate the anomaly and maintain the order of the game world. This agreement was the 15th clause. The White Hand even made a detailed classification of the anomaly, delineating it into 3 levels: dangerous, extremely dangerous, and disaster. The higher the level, the more importance the Silver Hand attached to it. For the dangerous level, it was enough to use the members of that country, so there was no need to activate the 15th clause. For the extremely dangerous level, the clause needed to be activated, and the members had to provide assistance to the members of that country within their ability. As for the final disaster level, that would be incredible. Once it was rated as a disaster level, all the members of the Silver Hand had to take action and do their best to extinguish the anomaly at all costs. Ouyang Shuo and his Shanghai City had undoubtedly become the biggest anomaly in the game. After the defeat in the Battle of Yunnan, Di Chun and the others finally admitted in frustration that the power of the Yin-Huang alliance alone could no longer contain the rise of Shanghai City. They were no longer able to eliminate this anomaly. Di Chun thought it was time to activate the 15th clause. The proposal was approved by Lord Chunxin, War Wolf, Xiongba, and Feng Qingyang, and had already come into effect. On New Year's Eve before the Spring Festival, the Silver Hand activated Article 15. Originally, the anomaly level submitted by Di Chun was disaster, but after the decision of the Round Table Conference of the Silver Hand, it was lowered to the extremely dangerous level. What Ouyang Shuo did not know was that William of the English region and Henry of the French region had tactfully spoken up for him at the Round Table Conference, allowing Shanghai City to escape. It was obvious that if the Silver Hand really went all out, Shanghai City would be severely injured even if it did not die. Even the current extremely dangerous level was enough to make Shanghai City suffer. At the same time, in the eyes of Jack Dawson and the others, the existence of Shanghai City was far from posing a direct threat to them. If they rated it as a disaster level right from the start, it would really damage the prestige of the Silver Hand. Don't tell me that we, the Silver Hand, are going to be scared to the point of wetting our pants by a territory that has not yet been established? If that's the case, where can we put our faces? Jack Dawson said at the Round Table Conference. The Hand of Silver had extraordinary pride. This was also why Shanghai City rose step by step in the wilderness, once pressuring the Yan-Huang alliance to the point of being unable to breathe. Di Chun and the others had never thought of using the power of the members of other countries to contain Shanghai City. It was only after the end of the Battle of Yunnan that Di Chun and the others had no choice but to bow their heads and admit defeat. Even so, Di Chun and the others became the laughingstock of the organization, unable to lift their heads. If possible, Di Chun hoped that the 15th clause would never be activated. In addition, Jack and the others did not want to rate Ouyang Shuo as a disaster because of strategic considerations. The strength of the Silver Hand, in addition to their own strength, also lay in their extremely strong concealment. Even the academics did not necessarily know all the members of the Silver Hand. However, once Ouyang Shuo was rated as a disaster, the Silver Hand would be completely exposed to the world. If the academics took advantage of this and used Shanghai City as an opportunity to incite the world's grassroots players to crusade against the Silver Hand, then the future of the Silver Hand would not be easy. Not to mention containing and destroying Shanghai City, they would not even be able to protect themselves. Compared to the real world, the number of players in the game could sometimes play a decisive role. Take the China region, for example. There were tens of millions of grassroots players. If all of them stood up against the Yan-Huang alliance, it would be enough to uproot the Yan-Huang alliance, leaving not even a trace. Even within the Yan-Huang alliance, there were many grassroots players. Having said that, as long as the Silver Hand did not jump out of their own accord, no matter how much the academics incited, no one would believe them. The players were not fools, and they would not be so easily incited. Otherwise, the Yan-Huang alliance would not have been able to survive until now. For the grassroots players to collectively riot, they needed a strong opportunity. Jack and the others were not fools, and they would not voluntarily give such an opportunity to the academics. For all these reasons, Di Chun's proposal of a disaster level was not approved. Di Chun was very regretful about this. In Di Chun's opinion, Ouyang Shuo was somewhat evil, and he had an extraordinary understanding of the game, Earth on Earth. Since the organization had made a move, they had to go all out. Otherwise, there might be some unforeseen changes. Di Chun was afraid. Even so, the fight still has to continue, Di Chun said. After the 15th clause came into effect, the members of the Silver Hand all over the world would do their best to assist the Yan-Huang alliance to curb the rise of the wilderness. An invisible net had already begun to envelop Shanghai City. Because of this, as soon as Feng Qiuhuang received the news, she immediately rushed to Shanghai City to inform. If Feng Qiuhuang had not returned to the Feng family and taken over as the head of the Feng family, Ouyang Shuo would have been kept in the dark about this matter from the Great Elder. Mobile users, please browse and enjoy a better reading experience. You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.